welcome to episode 4 of ScootTalks Sports. Big thank you to everybody who is hanging here on Twitch where we record the show live. That's twitch.tv/SCOOTR. Big thank you to everybody who's jumped into the chat early. Really excited for today's episode. It should be a lot of fun. We have a lot to get through today, and I'm actually just really excited, a little bit nervous for this one for sure. So, before we get into the guests and the segments, just wanted to remind everybody that the show is available as a podcast. It drops 24 hours after the live recording on Twitch as part of Twitch Sports. So you can find that on any podcast app. All you need to do is search ScootTalks Sports. You should be able to find it. Today's episode is going to be a lot of fun. We're bringing in Ben Fisk, who is a professional footballer. He's played in the Canadian Premier League. He's played in Spain. He's played in Ireland. So we're going to be picking his brain a little bit about how he got into the sport, growing up in Canada, and trying to make a career out of soccer here in North America. And we're also going to dive into the rather topical conversation around the Canadian Premier League and its refusal to acknowledge or certify the union that has been trying to get started here in Canada for professional footballers. And Ben Fisk is one of the members of the board of that union. He won't be speaking on behalf of the union, but we'll get an opportunity to talk about maybe some of the issues in the Canadian Premier League and why it's so important that these players are certified as soon as possible. So that's the first guest. Second guest, will be bringing in Andrew Gibney. Gibney is a former sports broadcaster and journalist who has covered all sorts of different leagues in Europe, as well as following the teams around the world for some tournaments. He's got a great history of knowledge and experience in football, and so I thought it would be a great opportunity to pick his brain as well, get to know a little bit about how he became such a big fan, how he got involved in sports journalism, and then eventually faded out of sports journalism and rediscovered that love of the game through Football Manager and Football Manager content. So those are going to be some really great guests. I'm very, very excited to bring them on. Big thank you to Ben taking the time to join us. Ben is a professional footballer. He's been a part of the Canadian Premier League, and he's also a member of the board of the Professional Footballer Association of Canada, I believe is the full name. So what we're going to do is we'll bring Ben in here, and I'm going to pick his brain for a little bit. And this is a great opportunity to have a bit of a chat. Please continue to roll in questions. I'll try to bring them up as I can. Otherwise, thank you again for being here, guys, and let's bring Ben on. Thank you very much for being here, Ben. Really appreciate you taking the time today. It's an absolute pleasure.
No problem at all, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem at all. And I will be completely honest with you. This is my first opportunity to interview a professional footballer. So if I seem a little bit meek, a little bit nervous, that's totally part of it, right? So
we're working class professional footballer. Remember that one. So
absolutely, I'll still see it. Tim's grabbing a coffee or something. Exactly, right? So
there you go. Exactly.
Yeah. So Ben, thank you again for joining us today. I really do appreciate it. It's nice to snag you while you're on the road. I know that you're busy, probably got a lot of things going on, especially with the union, but I thought it'd be a great opportunity to explore a little bit of your career, your love for the game, and then of course talk a little bit about the union and the Canadian Premier League.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
Have at it.
So first off, you take a look at your Wikipedia, you take a look at your history, your transfer market pages. What's the first thought of what's it like knowing that you have a Wikipedia page? There's people out there who are interested in actually keeping track of you and updating a wiki page. Is that kind of a cool experience?
To be honest, I don't think it's something I think about too often. Actually, once in a while, I'll check it. I'll see if the stats are updated. It's maybe a bit of a novelty when you're 18, 19 years old, but I think it wears off pretty quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the roots of the game, soccer, as they say here, I don't know if you'll probably see me float between soccer and football, as I'll have a lot of fans overseas that give me a smack when I say soccer. But I see that you kind of started your career, at least from what I was able to find, at the Grandview Legion. Is that correct? Is that kind of the first club or academy that you jumped into?
Yeah. So that's it's like a youth club in East Vancouver where I grew up. So it's the name Grandview Legion is because it's funded by the Legion there. So so that's kind of where I played for my first teams, and scored my first goals and all that. So it's some good memories. And actually the coordinator or director or whatever of that team actually ended up being my mom's next door neighbor when I was, now playing professionally for the last few years. So that was pretty funny to have that connection as well.
Small world, even in
Yeah,
Vancouver, I suppose.
small community in East Van as well. It's pretty tight knit.
So in terms of the getting interested in the sport, what drew you to the sport of soccer? Like, were you someone who kind of grew up in a household surrounded by sports? Was it always there, or what got you or attracted to wanting to play?
Actually, my parents aren't very, they're very sporty, but more, like outdoorsy, kind of hiking, running, biking, type stuff. They weren't, big team sport people as far as, being fans of any particular sport. But my brothers and I all just kind of had a lot of energy, and, you kind of need an outlet for that. So, I played just about every sport under the sun growing up. And, I think at one point I wanted to be in the NHL, another point I wanted to be in the NBA, and everything in between. I think I wanted to be a soccer player. So it was always the one that kind of stuck out the best for me. And, physique wise, I probably didn't have much of a chance in the other sports. So.
Yeah, they certainly like the height in the NBA, that is for sure.
And I certainly don't have a whole lot of that.
Yeah, hey, though you never know, right? There's always those players that
That's true.
Steve
Very
Nashes
true.
and others that can tend to break it through. Iverson was a big favorite of mine. When did you kind of make the decision to start taking soccer seriously? Like, was there a decision or kind of a moment as you were growing up where you're like, this is something I really want to chase and see where it takes me? Or was it something that you were just like, hey, this is really fun, I'm gonna hop on this ride as long as it lasts? Or were you serious about it early?
No, I was pretty serious about it early. Like I said, I kind of at certain points in my childhood, I wanted to be a pro in a few different sports. But being a professional athlete was definitely the only thing I ever wanted to do. So when I was about, I think 13 is when I quit hockey. I was playing both hockey and soccer at the highest level for my age group at that point. And the driving and all that was just getting a little crazy for my parents. And it's not like they forced me to make a decision or anything like that, but I think I could just kind of see, the time they're having to put in, and then also my time was being split, and I felt like that was holding me back from maybe being the best player I could in either sport. So so I obviously chose soccer, and it turned out pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to have, absolutely. So from there, it seems like the next step is you kind of got either scouted or had some conversations with the Whitecaps. How did that come about? How did your first contact with the Whitecaps begin?
It's a bit of a long story. Like the Whitecaps organization has changed a lot over the years, and whether it was my age group exactly, but around the time that I was coming through, I felt like we were often kind of the guinea pigs for all the different things that they tried out. With that, obviously, came more opportunity as well than I think some of the generations before us. So I'd say when I was about 13, 14, started training with they had a prospects program, they called it at the time. And that was just like you'd play for your club team through the week and on the weekend. And then, one night a week, you'd go train with the Whitecaps group, and it would be, the best players from each club team and stuff. And that kind of, from then on, it was I was involved in whatever was available for my age group until ultimately going full time with them when I was 16, I think.
Very cool. Very cool. So what was that experience like? Like, were you, when you first kind of joined, the different programs that they were offering and you got a chance to kind of train with that larger group, was there some players there you were kind of in awe with? Was it really fun to kind of go on the field with a variety of players in terms of age group?
Yeah, it was very cool. And, I was obviously always one of the better kids, I guess, for my age group, but at no point during my childhood did I feel like I was the best player that there was, at that level or in my age group. So I always felt a little bit timid going into those environments, and, not necessarily sure if I fit in or not, and typical kind of teenage feelings. But they're just kind of under the magnifying glass a little bit when it's high level sports, I think. So so yeah, it was always I always felt like it was a really nice challenge, and I felt very very proud and and honored anytime I got called in. And yeah, it wasn't until I was a little bit older in my teens that I kind of figured out, oh, you know what, I do a little more than just fit in here kind of thing. But it took me a little while to find my feet.
So once you found your feet and, you know, you were taking part of that program, what was some of your favorite memories from the Whitecaps program? Was there anything that stuck out, players that you met, or moments or games or scrimmages, or even just coaches that you really, you know, took a shine to when you were there?
Yeah, I'll start with the coaches first because I had two, you know, very influential coaches. The first one was Bart Chauffeur. He's a Dutch guy in Vancouver who, you know, I don't think there's too many high-level players from the Greater Vancouver area that didn't have Bart at some point during their childhood. So he was great for me. And then my residency coach, when I eventually signed full-time with the Whitecaps, was a guy named Richard Grootscholten, another Dutch guy actually, who's also very influential for me. So those two coaches stick out. As far as, you know, moments, turning points, a big one for me, I kind of touched on, you know, I didn't feel necessarily like the most confident player always in that environment. I was kind of wondering if I belonged and stuff like that. And actually, you know, before I'd signed with residency, I got invited to go to Spain to play some exhibition games in Madrid against Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, Getafe, you know, who's who of La Liga teams. So just getting that invite was like, I was like, oh my God, like it was so out of left field for me. And, you know, obviously I went and was really excited for it, but I kind of went, you know, not thinking I was going to play, or, you know, I'm just here to kind of, you know, fill a roster spot kind of thing. And I ended up, you know, starting every game and scored a couple big goals against Real Madrid, and we beat their U19 team and stuff. And I think I was only 16 at the time. So it was like, oh, okay, like, you know, I kind of belong in this environment, and it kind of just, you know, just kind of sparked that confidence and that belief that I think was in there all along, but maybe just needed a bit of a, you know, external kind of trigger to get it going. So that was definitely a turning point, because then from then I ended up, you know, signing with the residency full time. Getting paid while you're in high school to play soccer is a pretty cool feeling. It definitely helps when you're out at a party Friday night and can find a way to get your own beer.
Yeah.
Pretty sweet. So yeah, that kind of kickstarted things. And then from there, you know, I just became very focused. And, you know, the beers on the Friday night actually stopped for a long time. You know, I kind of realized, okay, I actually have a real chance here to make something happen. And then, you know, it just kind of felt like things started falling into place, and I just kept trying to do what I was good at.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you make that comment about, you know, the Friday nights kind of faded away, right? It's just, I guess, especially after going to Spain and playing on a pitch with, you know, Real Madrid, Atletico. Those are memories that, you know, you'll probably tell your kids, if you ever have kids, or your family later in life, right? It's one of those moments that you'll always remember. It's interesting because from there, your next kind of career moment, you actually did end up going over to Spain and playing a couple of seasons, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. Your first move to, and I'm hoping I'm going to say this right. You can correct me if I pronounce this wrong, but Caruso. I'm not sure. Caruso. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you scored a hat trick when you were there. What was that like? What was it like playing for that Spanish team? What was the environment like? The supporters? Is it a new experience for you?
It was, yeah. You know, we have jumped quite far ahead there. There's, you know, a big gap in my career there that, you know, I was still with the Whitecaps and all that. So long story short, you know, after signing, you know, a contract with the Whitecaps and stuff, you know, I never really got the opportunity with the first team, and went to a few preseasons and all that, and you know, just wasn't ready to make that step, I guess. So yeah, I started looking elsewhere, and I'd always had the idea to try and go to Europe. And yeah, I mean, Spain was obviously always going to be near the top of my list, but I was pretty open to anything. So ended up going on trial for a month at Deportivo and a month at Villarreal, just before kind of their seasons were gonna start. And you know, I kind of thought I would for sure catch on with one of those teams, and it didn't happen. So I was lucky enough, though, that while I was with Deportivo, I played a friendly game, and Caruso saw me, and their coach kind of figured out how to get in touch with me, and invited me to come down there. So it was quite cool how it all worked out. And then, all of a sudden I was thrust into kind of professional football in Spain. Coruso is a very small club, very kind of humble, small club, kind of minnows in the league that they were in, but was, every single game all of a sudden was like a cup final kind of thing. And I wasn't really used to that yet, coming from just, playing youth games. And I'd been on loan to Charleston Battery. That was kind of my only taste of professional football at that point. But just being thrust into this environment where everything, like every little touch you make, really matters. So the hat trick, again, is kind of a good story because I'd only started 2 games for the team. The first game did well. Second game kind of, shit the bed a bit, and didn't see the pitch for I think it was 10 or 12 games in a row, kind of through the fall and winter. And, I'm 21 years old, I think I was. And, up until that point, I was, one of the stars of the Whitecaps Academy and training with the first team and all that and feeling pretty good. So then to kind of have things just like down in the dumps for a while was pretty tough. And then the game I actually scored the hat trick that was the first start I'd gotten in a really long time. And it was totally out of left field. I had no idea I was going to be playing. Coach gives the starting lineup, 2.5 hours before the game or whatever it was. And I was like, oh, here we go. Like, this is what I've been, busting my balls all winter for. And, I just went out and played like it was my last game, and obviously worked out pretty well. So.
Yeah, I mean that's quite the story. It's interesting because obviously, when I'm trying to without picking your brain before an interview, it's trying to find all those gaps. And so you mentioned something about when you went over to Spain and they ended up finding you. Did you have an agent at that time, or was it purely people were ringing your phone going, hey?
No, it's through an agent. Yeah, I think you got to be a pretty well-known young player to be getting phone calls from foreign countries that with no connection there, right? So so I was lucky enough to get those opportunities, and then go on trial and kind of see what happens. I think a lot of young Canadian players have been through something similar.
Yeah, and I think that's especially before the Canadian Premier League, the NASL was around for a while. There wasn't really a lot of opportunities to kind of grow within the country, right? It seemed like if you look up at most Canadians who were able to go abroad or Canadian professionals, you go and you look at the history of where they've been. It's always kind of an interesting kind of ride where you're taking opportunities wherever they come, right?
Totally.
So it seems like that next opportunity came from Deportivo. So you actually went and played for their B side for a while. How did that compare to playing with kind of the minnow and then moving to a B side of obviously a club that has pretty storied history? It's a relatively well-known commodity in Spanish football.
Yeah, so I kind of touched on I spent a month on trial with them before joining Caruso, and I absolutely loved it there. I was quite disappointed not to stay, but I kind of had it in my head, like they made it pretty clear they'd be watching, kind of thing. Caruso's just an hour and a half away from Coruña, where Deportivo is situated, so I kind of had that goal set where I want to try and kill it this season, and if I do and they're true to their word, kind of thing, like it might work out. So that's ultimately obviously what happened. And joining that club for that year flew by pretty fast, but it was just unbelievable. Like training with the first team there, they're in La Liga at that point. You train with these guys Monday to Friday, and then go watch them get, beat 7-2 by Barcelona on the weekend. It definitely shows you there's levels even at the highest level. There's levels to where you're at for sure. But, sharing the pitch with some of those players, I was lucky enough, to play one cup match with the first team, and yeah, it was just, incredible memories for good and bad, to be honest. Some of the highest points of my career were like I said, being involved in that group and kind of being at touching distance of my ultimate, kind of goal and dream. And then obviously to kind of have it fall apart and not stick on, just spending the 1 year obviously is not how I planned when I went there. So it really, I think there's a lot of growing up for me in that season, just ups and downs and everything in between. So.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds like a lot of, if I'm thinking about myself at that age, I don't know if I would have been able to kind of handle or get that professional mindset and be able to bounce back from some of those, hey, you had 2 starts and now you're not starting for 10 games. Here's a hat trick, right? Like there is that kind of up and down that you have to manage. Is that something that you felt was a really big key to your development, was being comfortable with those ups and downs and being able to work through them? Or was that something you have always kind of viewed as a challenge?
I definitely always view it as a challenge, but those couple years in Spain definitely kind of drove it home for me. Definitely for good and bad, showed me that, the value of just being resilient. And also a very, very important life lesson, I think, for everyone is just, you can put absolutely everything you have into something. And that doesn't guarantee that it's going to work out the way you want, right? So it kind of, it reinstilled in me how much I love the game and how, I felt very beat down by not sticking on at Deportivo and not breaking into the first team. That's the closest thing to kind of depression that I've ever felt was coming home after that year. And just that feeling of like, I've given this everything and it hasn't worked out. But then there's also something very liberating by going through that and picking yourself back up and being like, no, this, for good or bad, this is exactly what I want to be doing with my life. And, I may not, I have no idea what the future holds, but there's nothing else I'd rather, kind of give my time and energy to.
Here's a good question, actually. I'm going to bring it up from the chat. I do like to highlight a question here from folks when it comes. So a friend of mine, Intero Zed, was there a big change in the approach into football between Canada and Spain in terms of the emphasis on technical training, tactical, etc.? Like, what were the big changes in the way you approach the day-to-day work? Or was there any changes?
By far the biggest change for me was tactics. Part of it is obviously not being too involved at the first team level in North America. Trained with the Whitecaps first team a lot and had my loan spell at Charleston. But I'd never been, a full-time first team player. So being exposed to, different kind of training mindsets where, everything you do Monday to Friday is preparing for Saturday. It's not just about, working on the skills that you want to work on and staying after training for some extra finishing and stuff like that, which, growing up, you're always doing that stuff to try and kind of maximize your value as a player, right? Where transitioning into full-time men's football, you're spending all week preparing for your opponent, and especially for a team like Caruso, I feel very blessed to have gone to a bit of a smaller team where we were going into every single game kind of as an underdog and preparing to play against a team that had 10 times the budget that we did, and just a much better team on paper. So spending 2 hours on a Monday working on defensive shape is not exactly the funnest training session to have, but learning those kind of nuances of the game and how to approach different games and getting used to not always being the best player at the level you're at or the best team was very invaluable for me.
Really, truly, kind of embracing the work that comes with it, right? In the sense
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's it's really interesting to me because when you look at all the places that you've been, that is one of kind of the smaller type community clubs, but it seems like it had a real impact on your character. And it's very interesting. We'll skip a little bit further ahead. So you finished off. There was the disappointment of not sticking on with Deportivo, and then you head back to Canada. At this point, what's happening? Like, what are you doing? Do you have offers on the table? What are you thinking after that kind of disappointment?
Yeah, so the big thing was the economic situation in Spain at the time. Leaving Deportivo, I had a number of options to stay at. For example, to go back to Caruso or other teams at that level, which footballing wise was a great league. I really enjoyed it, but financially and that kind of those sort of off field things, it wasn't in the best place. Rightly or wrongly, I kind of felt that at that point, I did want to make a bit more money and kind of take that next step forward in my career. I also felt a little bit broken down just by that experience at Deportivo, and so while I was looking at options, and the plan was still to go back to Spain, but I think I had a little bit of whether I was acknowledging it or not, I had a little bit of that feeling that maybe that wasn't what I wanted to do. And so when the opportunity to go to Edmonton came up, just being close to home and playing in my home country, and kind of that feeling of, okay, I'm not going to be the foreign guy anymore. Like I'm in a country, in a league, and a team that is going to put Canadian players ahead of other players, where I just spent almost 3 years being the foreign guy, and it's like, if you got to be twice as good as the Spanish guy in your position, kind of thing. So all of that was very attractive to me, and I'd worked with Colin Miller before with the Whitecaps, and it just kind of felt like a good move. Yeah, that was about it. I was kind of still 23, I think, at the time, and when the offer came on, it was a pretty quick decision.
Here's another question from the chat, and we're going to roll a little bit back a bit, but here's an interesting question from Tedium. How hard was the language barrier when you first moved to Spain, and how long did it take you to get up to speed?
It was pretty tough. I didn't speak a lick of Spanish when I went, but I kind of learned pretty quickly that if I didn't learn, I wasn't going to have any friends. So it was trial by fire, and I went in. My now fiance, then young girlfriend, gave me a little pocket Spanish English dictionary that I started reading cover to cover on the plane, and I kind of went from there. I was lucky enough to pick it up pretty quick, and I'm still fluent Spanish speaker now. So it's been a cool little keepsake, I guess, I've kept with me from that experience.
Yeah, that's very cool. And it's just interesting because whenever I think of, like, even just a normal day-to-day 9-to-5 job, I'm like, I have to speak a completely different language. That's intimidating as hell.
Right.
Right. So it's very cool that you're able to take that, and now if you travel back there, you travel anyone, you can whisper in different languages without anyone knowing.
Yeah.
So the NASL, the North American Soccer League, which was a very unique league for sure in terms of the amount of the distance between teams was pretty astounding. What was it like playing in that league in terms of the travel? Like, I'm just looking at some of the teams that existed, and the amount of travel from Edmonton, Alberta would have been pretty astounding. What do you remember the most from your NASL experience?
The first thing was on pitch, just playing against some household names and stuff like that, kind of stuck out, and again at that age, that was a pretty cool kind of novelty to be playing at a level where I felt, okay, this is really cool, and all the travel at first is really cool as well, until you actually have to do it, and then you're waiting 4 hours for a missed flight from Puerto Rico to New York to San Francisco, and there and back again. So the travel was like, you nailed it. It was absolutely nuts. Like, and Edmonton was the worst city for it. Like, all the other teams hated coming to Edmonton because there's no direct flights. Like, usually we'd have at least 2 connecting flights to get anywhere we were going. So it makes for some fun team bonding for sure. It makes for some fun, just experiences where, like I said, missed flights, lightning delays and all that kind of stuff. Not getting into Indianapolis until 3 hours before the game, kind of thing, trying to get a bite to eat, and then go out and you still have to do your job. So there's, I guess it got a little old sometimes, but looking back on it, it was pretty fun. And obviously traveling to a lot of cool cities as well. Like I touched on New York, Puerto Rico, San Francisco, Miami. It was pretty good.
It was a cool
not going to
league.
complain. Not going to complain at all.
Yeah, like, it was a cool league in the sense of the teams and the cities and like who was involved, and then there was Edmonton. Like, it was just felt like way up here. Okay, we're going to join too, right? But I think that had something to do with the dedication of the ownership in Edmonton too, right? Of really
Absolutely.
wanting to make sure this team worked, and we can skip a little bit further forward and bringing the team back out of kind of a pause, right?
Yeah, I think Tom and Dave Fath there have been they've shown commitment and then some to growing that team, and kind of rolling with the punches that followed with NASL. I know it wasn't definitely wasn't an easy league to be an owner in. You had, I think, Miami and New York Cosmos paying guys, $1 million a year, and you had Little FC Edmonton trying to compete. So it's pretty cool to see how we did, and especially my first season, we made the semifinal in the playoffs, and it was just a testament to hard work, and Colin Miller obviously getting the team sorted and cohesively finding a way to compete in that league.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you mention the New York Cosmos, right, it's one of those teams in North America that has a little bit of history, of love, and a knowledge out of North America. People always seem to recognize that club, right?
Totally, yeah.
So NASL played there until basically the league went defunct, when it decided that the costs weren't balanced. And as you mentioned, there was some teams that had money, teams that didn't. It was sort of a very unique. Again, if you, I've always mentioned it to folks whenever they talk about why is the Canadian Premier League just starting now, or why is this? It's like, just go look on Wikipedia and search defunct soccer leagues in North America, and you'll see a list of loads of them. NASL being one of them now, right? And it's kind of cool.
And I think NASL multiple times as well.
Yeah, exactly. Re-kicked it back off, failed, brought it back again, right? It's very unique being a part of this kind of I don't know what you want to call it, the industry in North America.
Yeah.
But from there, once the league kind of decided that this was over, what were your thoughts then? Like, is it the same kind of process as before with Deportivo, or was it a different feeling now of, I'm going to go somewhere now, I'm going to find a new place to play?
I was a little bit disappointed when the league folded, simply because I had a couple good years there, and I knew there's a couple bigger teams in the league that were snooping around a little bit and showing some interest in me. So that side of it was disappointing. But at the same time, I kind of felt like it was maybe the kick I needed to try my hand overseas again. So that's what I kind of focused on doing. And ultimately, Derry City kind of came calling through one of my teammates at Edmonton. Actually, his father there, Kenny Shields, was the manager. And he kind of recommended me to his dad, and didn't happen for a little while, but I think they ended up selling a player to Portsmouth in England, and brought me in pretty quick after that. So it was a pretty easy transition as far as being without a job for a while, and it just came about pretty quick, and it was a pretty cool experience.
So Derry City, what was it like playing in Ireland? What was the Irish league like in comparison to your experiences, obviously in North America and then also in Spain?
It was a fun little middle ground, I would say. Obviously, English speaking, so that was fun. I played with a few Northern Irish guys at Edmonton, and Daryl Fordyce, Albert Watson, and Dean Shields, who ultimately helped me kind of get that move. So I knew a bit about the culture. I knew the guys were good banter and all that. So it was a pretty smooth transition into the team. It was a little bit trial by fire again, just because I joined mid-season. So I think I arrived, and 10 days after arriving, played 90 minutes against Shamrock Rovers, one of the top teams in the league. And a few weeks after that, I was playing Europa League qualifying for them and stuff. So it was, it kind of felt like I was waiting for an opportunity. I was without a team for a few months, and then as soon as that came about, it was like boom, like you're in straight to the front lines. Fighting week in, week out. So it was pretty fun.
What was your favorite memory of playing in Ireland? Was it the Europa games? Was it some of the fans? Was it just, being in a different country with, obviously Ireland is kind of a really cool place to be. Some of the folks who are watching are from there, but what was your favorite memory of playing for Derry City, whether it was on the pitch, off the pitch, or even just, living in Ireland?
Everything you touched on is definitely a high. The Europa League games were pretty cool, but by far, kind of the best memory, we won the League Cup there. So that final game, we actually got to host. So played in Derry in a sold out stadium. I assisted the winning goal, and it was like, this is what you trained your whole life for, kind of thing, and lifting a trophy for the first time at the professional level was, it's indescribable. It's absolutely priceless, and everything, the entire kind of 24 hours post match as well. Getting out on the town with the guys, and you got fans sending drinks over and singing to you in the streets and all that. It's just an unbelievable experience. I think that any player who's been lucky enough to feel that, I think it's like the best drug you could ever try in your life.
Yeah.
It's pretty indescribable.
Yeah, it sounds incredible, right? To have loads of folks singing at you, it'd be something else for sure.
Yeah.
So Derry City, and then at this point, there's rumors the league has started to develop. There's commitment into the Canadian Premier League. At what point do you start hearing rumblings about this league? Have you heard about it previously? Had it been something that players had talked about wanting to happen at some point? What was your first, I guess, moment where you realized that there was a new top flight league being developed in Canada?
I think a lot of what I heard originally was just through social media and stuff, just the same as the fans would have, just little rumblings about a league and stuff. Then it started to, I think when it was actually announced, it started to feel a bit more real. I kind of figured I would know a lot of the coaches, I would know, a lot of the people involved. So it was for sure something that I was interested in. Originally, I was pretty happy in Ireland. I was planning to re-sign. And so it was kind of something I was excited to watch from afar. And then actually just kind of the way it all happened, I think it was like 3 or 4 days after I agreed to my new contract at Derry, the same manager that brought me in actually got sacked at the end of the season. And so the ownership had said, we've got your contract on the table, but the new manager is going to have to come in and approve it, kind of thing. And obviously I wasn't too thrilled about that. And around the same time, I got a message from Rob Friend on Instagram about Pacific, and it kind of just, felt like the perfect storm. I obviously negotiation wise, I tried to make it seem like I wasn't too eager, but it was pretty hard to hide. Team on Vancouver Island, hour and a half ferry from home. It was a pretty exciting thing to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, I can still remember when your signing was announced, and I was somebody who was still kind of learning the names in the Canadian soccer, and it was always presented, Ben Fisk is going to Pacific. It was a big, I can remember it being a big deal at the time, especially for the fans in Pacific, to know that somebody who was connected, whether or not it was Vancouver Island community, you're a BC kid, you grew up there, right? So I remember that pretty fondly, thinking, oh wow, they're bringing a player from overseas already. This is amazing, right? Here's a question that came from the chat, and I thought it was interesting. You had a history with FC Edmonton. Did they actually reach out at all in terms of the Canadian Premier League, or was Pacific sort of the first of the door, and that was your dream right there because it was so close to home?
I'd had a few chats with Jeff Paulus, who was the assistant when I was there. Never anything formal. I think I just told him that I was re-signing with Derry because at that point, that's what I was doing. So like I said, it was just kind of this perfect storm, how everything, A, B, and C kind of fell into place one after the other. So it would have been something I was open to. But then definitely once Pacific was on the table, that's kind of the only place I wanted to come home to.
So Pacific FC, your first year in a brand new league, which must be unique in a sense because, it's a new league. There's the staff are new to the league. The officials, everything is basically kind of being cobbled together over a 3-year plan. What was that first year like in comparison to some of your professional seasons overseas, whether it was in Spain or in Ireland?
Yeah, I mean, it was very different in like an infinite number of ways. It was very cool. It was, brand new team, brand new league. So everything was like I had no idea what to expect, kind of thing. Every team that I've been to up until that point, you can Google them and see what the stadium looks like on match day. You can see what what colors the fans wear, what kind of tifos they make, what kind of songs they sing, all that kind of stuff, so that when you're actually preparing for that first game, you've already got a vision of what it's going to look like. And so as far as preparing on the footballing side, I'd never thought that not being able to visualize it would actually have an effect on me, but it was quite weird preparing for that first game at West Hills, just not being, literally having no idea what it was going to look like. So it was just kind of turned into this roller coaster of a season with all these unknowns, and kind of equal parts challenging and exciting. So, lots of highs, like that first win in CPL history at West Hills, that, unbelievable day. I would almost equate it to kind of the cup final in Derry, where other than the silverware at the end of it, it just felt like this build of kind of emotion and stress of, are we going to perform? The fans, maybe they're not going to come back if we don't put on a good show, kind of thing. So all that kind of emotion building up to ultimately kind of go out and get that win was really, really cool. And just to see, fans supporting a team that had never kicked a ball before, and selling out, the stadium on the first day, like all those little moments, I'll have with me forever, as, just incredible memories to be a part of. And, the rest of the season was kind of more of the same. It was, a lot of ups and downs. We had a tough kind of start to the season, picked things up in the summer. And I think ultimately, given all the kind of challenges we faced with injuries and whatnot, Michael getting sacked at the end of the season, like there was a lot of emotions going through the players, I think, and in a very young group without a whole lot of veteran leadership with the injuries we had. So I think we ultimately put together a season we could be very proud of. And I think you've seen that now with Pacific over 2020, and now how they started in 2021. The guys that have kind of been there the whole time, you can see a real maturity that they've grown into, and there's a good reason why they're one of the top teams in the league now.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Pacific is one of those teams that just, especially this year, has looked really well put together, and you're seeing that evolution year to year to year. That's another good question for you. It's a little bit off, but here's a question for you. Have you seen, and I, as a fan, a supporter, I've seen this incredible change in quality. It seems like each year the Canadian Premier League shows a bit more quality, and it seems like the players are more comfortable. The coaches seem to know where players want to play or how they feel comfortable playing. Are you seeing that as, someone who's watching a little bit this year, as well as being a professional footballer? Are you seeing that same kind of increase in quality year to year right now?
Yeah, I am, for sure. I think, especially this year, I think 2020 was just the way it came about with COVID and not having, nobody had a proper preseason. It was a packed schedule. There's a lot of things a lot of variables that were working against us, I guess. 2021 obviously has not been ideal as well, but certain teams, have been able to actually still get a proper preseason in, and I think that's made a big difference. Seeing just that little extra bit of sharpness, a little bit of extra fitness. You can run all day, but nothing actually compares to being in a match, and that kind of 90-minute fitness. There's really no way to replicate it other than actually getting some games under your belt. So I totally agree with you. I think the quality's definitely gone up, and it's been amazing to see. Some of the goals being scored this year have been just top notch.
Yeah.
So it's been really fun to actually kind of step back and watch as a fan and just supporter of Canadian soccer like anyone else.
Yeah. Here's a question for you. So your first season, Pacific FC, the manager gets sacked. At this point, are you thinking that you're wanting a new team, or is it a conversation that's happening at this point, or are you excited at the idea of, there's an Atletico Ottawa that's coming. They're owned by Atletico Madrid. There's that kind of interesting dynamic of that new team. What were you thinking at the end of that first season?
To be honest, there was nothing in my mind other than staying at Pacific, and that was the plan for almost the entire off season. It only really came about with Ottawa. I think I actually pretty much heard about the team like the day before the announcement, when I found out that they were interested. But ultimately, the plan was always to stay with Pacific, and we just had a bit of a hiccup with the negotiations and all that. And again, it was kind of just this perfect falling into place where that was happening. And Ottawa just kind of came calling pretty quick, kind of came hard and fast at me, and asked me to come be obviously a key player in their first signing and all that. So it just kind of fell into place, and like I said, it definitely wasn't the plan, but it felt kind of like it was meant to be a bit. So.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those, a little bit of a trivia piece too, right? It's like who was the first signing for Atletico Ottawa? be Ben Fisk for the rest of time, right? Here's a question for you. You mentioned a little bit of how that 2020 season, I mean, obviously it's tough. You've got COVID. They did a bubble season in PEI, which is, not a place that was really known for its facilities. You basically set up sort of in a field while you were there. What was that bubble season like at the Island Games? Like, was that an enjoyable experience for players, or was that more of a grind and then you didn't really realize, the moment until it was done?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely enjoyable in the sense that we'd all been waiting to play for a long time. So just getting back on the pitch was definitely, maybe more of a relief than anything. As far as, it's kind of hard to describe. I think for what it was, for what was available for the league at that point, I think they did a very good job pulling that off. And I wasn't a part of the bubble this year, but I think definitely the league and ownership groups need to be commended for pulling those tournaments together. It's not easy. Nobody's trying to pretend like it's easy to just put together a 5-star tournament on a few weeks' notice and make everybody happy, right? So for what it was, I think they did a great job, and obviously the quality of play was pretty good, and that's down to the coaching staff and the players just keeping themselves ready and keeping themselves sharp, I guess, without a whole lot of training going into it. Would I like to do it again? Probably not. There's a number of reasons why I wasn't a part of this bubble, but I wasn't exactly jumping at the bit to go spend 6 weeks in Winnipeg away from home again, eating questionable food and all that good stuff. So, but given the circumstances, of course, it's better to be playing than not playing. And I think Canada, as far as COVID regulations and all that, was a lot harder to get something going than in other countries around the world. So, all things considered, obviously better to be playing than not.
I'm going to go ahead and be nice to my friend Interrosi here. He's put a comment in the chat. And of course, it's the same, no matter where I am in Canada, it's always the same, but no one wants to spend time in Winnipeg, right? That was probably.
I don't know. I've never spent enough time in Winnipeg to comment on that, but
I'll change your mind. Just come in the summer. Don't come in the winter. Okay.
The Valor players seem to be enjoying it the way they've started the season, so that's what I'll go off. It seems like
there you go.
It can't be all bad if the guys are going out and competing like that.
Appreciate that, Ben. A little tip of the hat. I love that. So we've talked a little bit about Pacific. We've talked about Atletico. Let's move into this season. Let's move into what's happening a little bit recently. So this year you haven't signed for a team, so you've been sitting back and there's been a little bit of chatter. I'm sure you've seen it on Twitter where it's like, where's Ben Fisk? Why hasn't Ben Fisk been signed? Is it
and I've yet to see anyone get it right that I'm just enjoying a little sabbatical.
So is that was going to be my question? Was it purely to avoid another bubble event, and then now maybe you're going to have a conversation, or is it something where you're taking a year off and maybe you're thinking about coming back next season? Or if you're not comfortable talking about this, Ben, that's okay too. Like, I just thought I'd ask why I have you here.
No, I'm open book, to be honest. I think there's a lot of people speculating and no one's really just asked straight up. So no, this was I never planned to not be playing at this point. It's just kind of the way the cards have fallen. Up until, I think, honestly, end of March, potentially early April, the plan was still to stay with Ottawa. And we'd had a deal worked out that fell through for some reasons, that I'm not going to comment on, but, kind of at the league level and just, a bit of kind of lack of communication, I guess. So I was pretty upset with how that went down, to be perfectly honest. I was I felt like I've given a lot to the league and stuff like that. So just the way it all kind of happened, I was not happy with. And then it also left me in a position where, most of the rosters were pretty set coming into the 2021 season. So I definitely made some calls to some other CPL teams, but it was kind of a case of we're all set for now. Let's touch base mid-season kind of thing. So I started to look elsewhere, and I kind of had it in my head. Okay, I was thinking, do I have another adventure left in me overseas somewhere? And I've explored those options a little bit and had a few opportunities, but ultimately kind of where I'm at in my life right now, getting married, working on my studies on the side. It's a lot of kind of moving parts to be thinking about. And I've kind of, came to the realization that staying in North America at least is kind of what I'd like to do right now. So then it was a case of let's wait for this bubble to end and see what comes up. So there's a few conversations being had right now, but it's gonna obviously kind of have to be the right move at this point. I'm settled and I definitely want to keep playing. There's no plans to hang up the boots, but I'm not gonna I don't want to keep bouncing around like I have been for most of my career. So I'm looking for something a bit more settled and potentially a bit more long term.
That makes total sense. I appreciate you being able to speak to that, and I appreciate you letting me pick your brain a little bit on it.
No, all good.
So Canadian Premier League, new league. It's 3 years in at this point. Obviously, players have made sacrifices in terms of some of the wages, some of the different things that are offered in order to support what I think most Canadian soccer fans, soccer players are excited to see, a top flight league where there's a clear path to pro for players who develop in this league. But we're here in the third year now. There's obviously a players union that has been created. You're a member of that union. You're a member of the board. What are some of the issues that are causing friction between the players union and the Canadian League, aside from the fact that they're just simply not recognizing you and not even responding to your lawyer, as we've seen on Twitter right now? As a player, is that frustrating? Are you feeling like, hey, I've made myself as a part of this league. I've put myself out there to support what your guys' objectives are because it's part of my goals too. And now you're feeling like maybe that old ownership player dynamic is happening where it's a one-way communication, or what is the main issues you're feeling as a player?
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of pride myself on being someone who's able to see both sides of it. So, I would be lying if I said I didn't understand the owner's perspective and the league's perspective. But I also think as an organization with the PFA, we've tried to make it very clear that we do see both sides, frankly, and we know where things are at right now, and we know that if you're thinking strictly, about dollars and cents, that a players union starting during the pandemic seems like they're just upset about wage cuts, et cetera, et cetera. And the reality is that's one small part, like very, very small piece of the pie. The bigger issues, are things like players not finding out about schedules until the fans do. We've got guys with wives and kids at home who, healthcare, depending where you live, can be quite expensive, especially for foreign players. Childcare, like it's just, the list goes on and on and on. Where a lot of the time we're just treated as assets, where we're also human beings too, and there's a whole lot more that goes into being a professional footballer than just the 28 game season you play. So there's just so many kind of points, talking points where we just want to be a part of the conversation, and we just want to be involved as some of the major stakeholders in what's happening here. We just want to be involved in those discussions on what's happening and as far as making plans for future seasons, et cetera, et cetera. We just want to be involved in those discussions. So as I touched on, the financial aspect of it, which of course it's the clickbait topic of any union, for sure. Everyone knows that's something to be talked about, but that is far and away from our top priority at this moment in time, and we've made that clear in our connections with the league, offering to forego collective bargaining for a number of years, et cetera, et cetera. That's not the priority right now. The priority is just giving the players a voice and being involved in decisions that ultimately affect us more than most.
And it's something that we've seen, I think, as fans, as supporters, as members of supporter groups. I mean, we see that these leaks come out, right, of the schedule or when a new team is joining, or and it always comes out as a leak from it feels like a little bit of a random Twitter account. Right. And that's where we get our league news for the most part as supporters. And so as players, if that's where you're getting your updates from, that would be incredibly, incredibly frustrating. One of the points you made earlier too was around this year's kickoff, the bubble, and the short training time that was given to some teams because of the different rules in different provinces. Is that sort of the type of thing where you need a player at the table to say, hey guys, like, you know, for example, Forge hasn't had the same type of training availability that some of these other teams have had? Is the league just not paying attention to that enough, and they're just maybe more concerned about ensuring the event gets started at a particular time? Or what's your thoughts on that?
You know, that one, I don't know if it's fair for me to comment on, simply because I wasn't a part of the teams. I wasn't one of the players preparing for it. You know, I know that each team's circumstances were very different, and a lot of that was down to the public health orders in each respective province. So, you know, that's a very complicated conversation. And the only thing I would say to it is, of course, it would be easier to involve the players and chat about it. I don't know to what extent they did, as far as, you know, chatting to the captain of each team, you know, or kind of the leaders of each team. I know, for example, 2020, the bubble season, the league was trying to involve the captains in the discussions and the planning. So whether it's through the union or not, that's obviously appreciated, and I think that goes a long way in kind of building some mutual respect between the players and the league. So yeah, I can't really comment on this year because I wasn't a part of those internal discussions. I know obviously that they didn't want to involve the PFA in it, and I find that disappointing. But you know, there's two sides to every coin. So I think the ownership in the league needs to be commended for sure for the amount of work that they've put in putting these tournaments on, and nobody is disagreeing that they've done a great job during the circumstances. It's just these little talking points that we think would frankly be a lot easier if we were involved, and we don't see it as an adversarial conversation whatsoever. I think we're all working towards the same goals to build this league into what we all know it's capable of becoming. And I think that kind of ability to work together on things is very beneficial for both parties.
So there's a question here earlier from a member of the chat, and so he's asked me to save this to when we got into the union stuff, and luckily I was able to remember. So without getting yourself in trouble, what was the response to the players' unionization effort from people behind the scene, coaches, club front offices, agents? And if that's something you can't answer, of course, let us know. But was the response primarily positive from those you worked with on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, frankly, very, very positive. So, I'm not going to get into too much detail. But also, I got to make it clear, I'm not speaking on behalf of the whole union here. These are totally personal opinions and experiences. But I'm not tied to any club right now. I'm not tied to anybody other than the union. So I am kind of free to give my opinions on things. So I do think that the support from just about everyone has been very positive, especially in my circle, my coaches and agencies and all that I've worked with. I think it's been very positive. I also think those sorts of people have been very supportive and very also kind of looking out for us. With me personally, they've been very quick to make sure, that we're looking at both sides of the coin, as I've kind of touched on, which I was very grateful for that, because a lot of the times, when say a bunch of players are speaking about the issues that involve us, it's very easy to kind of get into that mindset where you just start rambling on and you get upset about things, and that's great on one side of it. It's great to kind of get those emotions going. That's where a lot of kind of good initiatives come from and good ideas come from. But you always have to remain rational when you're thinking about these issues, and remember, the ownership in the league are the ones putting up millions of dollars every year to make this happen, and by no way, shape, or form do we want to discount that, right? We need to be respectful of that, and I'm going to keep saying it, see both sides of the coin, because there is two sides to this story, and all the support from the fans obviously is incredible, and we're incredibly grateful for that. But there's not good guys and bad guys here. This is two groups that ultimately need to be working together, and our goal is not to make the league look bad whatsoever, right? We know that if the league looks good, that's better for the players. There's going to be more money on the table in the future. There's going to be more opportunities, sponsorship wise, TV deals, all that stuff that really affects everyone in this conversation. And so those types of things we'd like to be working together to bring, all the best opportunities to the table for both league, ownership, teams, players, fans, so, all the stakeholders involved.
Yeah, and I think from a supporters standpoint, you can see all the supporters groups are just right there with you guys. It's a partnership, and I think we want, whether it's supporter groups, fans, the owners, and the players, we all sort of have a little bit of a part to play in the growth of this league. And you're right. I think it is a partnership at the end of the day, and it's one of those things that's always going to be tough to talk about, because whenever you talk about player unions, especially in North America, the first things that come to mind, right, are you're going to talk about the NHL lockouts, you're going to be talking about all these other things. And so there's what I think quite often happens is people immediately jump to those kind of negative conclusions from a union and don't think more about the fact that most unions work in partnership with their leagues, and it's much more of a
absolutely. And I think it's very easy to focus on the kind of negative stories because just like in the news, the negative stories are what everyone ends up wanting to read. But the day-to-day stuff, I think, is a lot more positive, and I think it's very short-sighted to not see the benefit of everyone working together, as you touched on, the fans included. I think a good example would be 2020 with the Black Lives Matter issues that were going on around the world, and we did end up speaking with the league, the players, and David Klanahan and other stakeholders involved. We collaborating on that, and I think that we ended up making a very moving demonstration and showing our support collectively, right? And so I really, honestly, I'm really not a fan of the kind of adversarial conversation that is kind of started at the moment, where it seems like it's us against them, like it's black and white. It's really it's not what I envisioned getting involved with the union, and I understand obviously there's going to be times like that, and now happens to be one of them. But I really hope that things kind of turn into a collective group effort in terms of building this league into the incredible potential that it has.
I think that's what we're all hoping for, right? We don't want to see that conflict, even though it plays well.
Absolutely. yeah, I'm sure it's pretty entertaining sometimes, of course. Some pretty creative fans out there, and it's been, for sure, some good smiles and laughs along the way. But I think we all know that the way forward is finding a middle ground, just on any sensitive topic, whether it's life, sports, everything in between. I think that's what we can all do to try and be better, really, right? We just try and find middle ground and understand that very few things in life are black and white.
Absolutely. And that's life is never black and white. It's never quite that easy. A couple of last questions for you just from the chat, Ben, before I let you go. And once again, a big thank you for taking the time to hang out. This has been great. I really, really do appreciate your time. Yellow Sweaty Gorilla with another question here.
Great name.
This is just fantastic, right? And if you don't know, and I don't know if you play Football Manager, Ben, but this man here is the guy who puts together the Canadian database every year, so all of us can play with you guys and all of the right staff.
Love it.
So anyway, his question is, and this is probably more of a fan player question, not really an official question to the league or the union or anything like that. But will Canadian Premier League ever serve as a place for veteran at peak Canadian players to provide experience and leadership? He's been disappointed to see the league has failed to provide an incentive to keep veteran players like Gasparato, Carrero, and you. Without these incentives, there seems to be a large gap in Canadian football. Do you have any thoughts on that comment?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's a great question and great comment. I think the league's made it very clear that the focus is on the youth, which, despite being a player in my prime, wanting to play at home, I think that's where the focus definitely should be. Absolutely. I think the CPL in 2021 is a shadow of what it's going to be in 2025 and 2030 and beyond. The future is in what we're building for sure. And it's a long-term game, and we're all, heavily invested in that. I do think that in the short term, there can be a bit more effort into creating spaces for veteran prime type players to have a home, and we're the guys who've had to go elsewhere and kind of pave the way for Canadians abroad, and the generations before me even more so, and they never had a CPL to come home to, right? So I do think hopefully moving forward there's going to be a bit more opportunity for guys to stay home and make a decent living. I think team to team coaches, different coaches are going to value that more than others, but as a whole, I would definitely like to see a bit more opportunity. Also for the young guys coming through who, they obviously all have big aspirations to get that big move. But the reality is, only a handful of guys are going to be able to kick on to bigger and better things. And only a handful of them are going to stick. Some, are going to go on to a bigger and better league and maybe not cut it, just like my experience at Deportivo. So I think that this league will continue kind of building a place for those guys to come home to, and I think it's very important for Canadian players to know that they have a place where they're valued and a place to play here, and hopefully that turns into a league that allows players to have a sustainable 10-year career where you don't have to worry about working another job in the off season and stuff like that. I think that's a goal that I'm sure everyone involved in the conversation would like to happen in the future. So, we'll see what happens. I'm not salty about where things are at right now, because as I touched on, I do think the focus should be on the youth players 100%. I don't disagree with that in the slightest, but we'll see what happens moving forward.
Fair. That's a great answer. And before I let you go, I'm going to pick one more question out of the group that's been left here. So I'll do two. So Sir Grunge has a question. What was the highlight of being a pro footballer? So that is a very wide open question. Yeah. It's pretty massive. Could you pick out one thing?
Oh man. It's the best job in the entire world. Like, you see the smile on my face when you just reading that question. Like, any big win where you got a tight knit group of guys. Anytime you get a big win or a big moment, even a big goal, the highs you get from those experiences are just the best feeling in the world. The camaraderie in a team, when things aren't going well, sometimes that's when a team comes the closest, and to build yourself out of the dumps kind of thing. It's an incredible feeling. Obviously winning some silverware is, I think, the pinnacle. But that all comes off the back of the things I've been touching on in terms of, building that cohesion in a team and getting those small moments add up to big results. So I guess to sum it all up, just working together with a great group of people towards a common goal, which I think just about anyone listening can probably, create a metaphor for in their own life in the workplace or with their families. But, professional sports just gives you that extra kind of incentive, and you're in the limelight, it's people are paying attention. And so it's just wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
That's awesome. So with that, I'll ask you one last question, and this is truly a fan question, but where would you like to see some more teams in the Canadian Premier League? We know that Saskatoon has been tentatively announced, and they look to be like they're trying to build a beautiful, beautiful ground right by the river. Where would you like to see a few more teams in Canada? And this is purely as a fan. No one's going to hold you to the fire here, Ben.
very, very, very selfishly, the Greater Vancouver area, I think, definitely has the support to have another team. And I think we can all imagine that rivalry with the Whitecaps in the Canadian Championship. As good as Pacific Whitecaps is going to be, I got that one circled on my calendar, of course. But yeah, I think a team in the Fraser Valley, which has been rumored, and somewhere in the Greater Vancouver area would be amazing. Looking at the country as a whole and not as a Vancouverite, I'd like to see another team in the Maritimes for sure. I think Halifax is one of the cooler places to go play. And I think, the way that city's come behind the team and stuff has been amazing. So I think another team in the Maritimes would be pretty cool. Saskatchewan seems like they got a great setup for sure. And yeah, maybe somewhere kind of unique, somewhere up north would be really cool. Like I don't know if that's in the works anywhere, but I think to make it, truly a coast to coast league, having like a team in each province would be really cool and make for a pretty sweet away trip too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would be nice just as a Valor supporter, it would be nice to have a team that's within maybe a weekend away day drive instead of
Totally.
a flight. That would be a dream.
Totally.
Right? So, but Ben, I want to say a huge thank you for coming on the show today. It's been a great pleasure having a conversation with you. Best of luck finding that next space. We're going to be looking forward to seeing you back on a pitch somewhere very soon. We know that you're going to bring a lot to whatever club you land with. So really do appreciate it. And we also really appreciate the work that you're putting in with the union and the fact that you were able to speak to some of those concerns today. It was really a pleasure to have you in.
Awesome. So, thank you so much for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it.
Last question for you. If people want to get a hold of you, where's the best place to do it? Where can they follow you? So we have you on Twitter at Ben Fisk. Where?
Yeah. Twitter at Ben Fisk, Instagram at Benjamin Fisk. And unfortunately, wasn't an early adopter of Instagram, so I missed the same username as Twitter. But yeah, pretty easy. I'm pretty active, and I quite enjoy engaging with fans and all that. So shoot me a message. Pretty open as far as questions and all that, and love a bit of banter as well and a good meme.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ben. All the best, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Jeremy. Chat soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that was Ben Fisk, a professional footballer who has played in the Canadian Premier League. He's played in Spain. He's played in Ireland. And he was sharing us a bit of his story, how he became a footballer, how he got involved, some of the stories from different places as he explored the world of being a professional footballer. And I just really want to thank him for the time. It was fantastic to have a little bit of insight into that as a casual fan myself. So big thank you. And once again, if you are listening, guys, you can you can take part and ask questions as part of the show. If you were here when we record live at 12 o'clock Central Standard Time every Monday and Friday. That's 6 p.m. over the pond, I believe. Jump in, say hi, and have an opportunity to ask a question, just like we were there with Ben. Our next guest is Andrew Gibney. Andrew Gibney is a former sports journalist. He is a massive football fan who fell in love with the sport and then fell out of love, recently regaining that love with a little bit of Football Manager content. I thought it would be really, really fun to pick his brain a little bit, explore his love of the sport, and talk a little bit about what's happening right now. Welcome, Andrew. Thank you very much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. I can't believe I'm following an actual footballer. It feels like I'm getting set up.
Hey, you know what? Listen, this is one of those shows where I try and bring people in when they have opportunity. I've been if I'm totally honest, I've been bugging Ben on DMs for a few days, and he's even on the road. So it was one of those things where it was like, what time will work, and I'll make everybody else fit. But honestly, I think it's a pleasure to have you here, Andrew. You have a load of experience, so please don't, you may not be on the pitch, but my goodness, you've watched hours upon hours, and it's going to be great to be able to pick your brain a bit.
I think, hours, days,
lifetime.
Lifetime, yeah. My first marriage ended probably because of football. So yeah,
we'll get into it, though, won't we? We will get into it. So a big thank you for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. You did a great job of kind of listing off. I always try to do a little bit of my own research beforehand, and no wiki page for Andrew here, but he gave me a great rundown on kind of his connection to the game and things that you've done throughout your career, and also now as a little bit of a Football Manager creator where you've rediscovered that love of the game. Let's talk a little bit just from the beginning, roots of the game. Where did you first start loving the game of football? And you're going to notice I'm going to say football now because we're transitioning over to a European. I cannot say soccer without some sort of a violent object being thrown at me. So where did it start?
I guess I watch American football, so I'm well versed in the nuances. But yeah, it's definitely football, and I mean the accent kind of maybe gives it away. I'm from just outside Glasgow, so it's like a family thing. My dad, my uncles, like. As far as I can remember, football was just part of your life. And my family are sort of Celtic fans. They grew up like in a mile from Celtic Park. So you don't even get a choice. Like this is your team. My mum's Protestant. Her dad was a Rangers fan, but like the strong sort of Celtic influence on my dad's side. Yeah, and he obviously took me to my first game when God was like 6, 7, 8 years old. The old Celtic Park when you had terraces, and it just goes from there. And I think that's most kind of Glaswegian, Scottish. You don't really get a choice in who you support. And like, I mean, you guys in Canada, I suppose you maybe have like an EPL team or another foreign team. You get to pick and choose who you like. We don't get that luxury. You're kind of thrown in. This is your team. And a lot of it depends on where you go to school as well. The very like religious, heavy like influence. So yeah, that was my introduction. And you play it as like a daily. Yeah, they're playing school on your breaks. You play after school. You play the weekends. You join a team. Like to say it's ingrained is I think putting it very lightly. It is a religion. That's and I think unless you live there, you don't realise. And I think that my wife Catherine, we went to my dad's, and we're walking through just outside where Celtic Park is. It's like a shopping centre, and people are wearing shirts, and it's like a Tuesday lunchtime. And she was like, "Is there a game on?" It's like, "No, this is just what happened. This is people wear the shirts every day. This is part of their life." And yeah, I think if you're outside that bubble, you don't quite realise how big it is.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And one of the things I've noticed as I've interviewed different people, North Americans, when we talk about, well, how did you get into the sport? Like, if you want to become a football or soccer fan in North America, it's almost a bit of stubbornness, because you kind of have to ignore what the media spends all its time covering. You're going to see hockey, you're going to see baseball, you're going to see basketball, but like you'll catch here's an EPL highlight 4 minutes at the end of the Sports Center update, right? It's not necessarily right at the front. So we often have, I don't know if it's a luxury, but we have a luxury to choose who we support and kind of find that connection, where I always find, just as you've mentioned, you're often born when the choice has been made for you.
Yeah, and I think that's when we'll get down the line as well. I wouldn't call myself a Celtic fan anymore. Like, I've not watched a Celtic game in it's getting on nearly 8, 9 years. Like, I kind of made that decision to go away from it, and people at home, like my family, don't quite get like they're like, what's happened here? But I think things happen and you move away, and you kind of, I think going down the journalism route especially kind of took me away from that love of a fan and of a team that you kind of grew up with, and it's been very interesting. And it was a good road. I don't have any regrets about it, but I think my family are like, especially I remember my little cousin Beth, who's now like in her 20s. She was like 8 or 9. She was like, "What?
How could you dare?"
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you'd mentioned, you were a Celtic, ticket holder for 7 years before you moved to England, and you were watching loads of games all over Europe. And I thought it was really interesting that you mentioned you started getting into Ligue 1 because of Pro Evolution Soccer 5 and 6. Can you talk a little bit about that? So, like, was it a certain team you were attracted to, or was it the league in general, or was it just French football?
There used to be some like sports shows over here that would show you clips of like random leagues. You see like Belgium and France and Holland, and it's just a different world. And there's a channel here called Channel 5. It's like a terrestrial channel. And at night time, they would just show, like, I think you got Argentina, Brazil, Holland, just full games, no like sports desk, no like information, just here's some games, just watch these. I'm like, cool, this is what, like, when you're a student, yeah, that's what I do, so watch. So I started getting interested in other leagues, and then I had a collection of scarves from various games, trips. And one of my friends, Lee, at uni, his mum was going to France on a business trip. And she was like, I'm going to go to a game. And I was like, she didn't know who she was going to see. Bring us back a scarf. Like, just pick one up. And she came back, and it was a Lille scarf. And I was like, I've never heard of them. Like, no idea who they were. Started doing some research, and through my whole life, I'm very much, I need to know everything. Like, who's this team? Who are they? And at the same time, I was really getting into Pro Evo, and there was a forum called EvoWeb, and there was a guy, I'm pretty sure he was like Canadian Iranian descent, and he'd done this massive database of Ligue 1, and he went through every team, like, meticulously, like trying to make them all, like, who takes the free kicks, who takes the corners, and just making all the stats better. And he wanted people to test it. So he was like, pick a team, play a couple of seasons, kind of write a report back on like, this guy's an attacking left back, this guy does this, then he can be like, yeah, this kind of fits. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to go Lille. I've got the scarf. Let's find out more about this team. And you play like 4 or 5 seasons with this like fictional team, as you well know, and you get invested. Like you're there. Like, I know this team's first 11. I know who. But then you start, because you're playing Ligue 1, so like I knew who Saint Etienne were, I know who Auxerre were, and you start learning. And my personality is now I'm looking at real life who are Auxerre and start following Lille's results. And I think it was the contrast of, you went to Celtic games and it's hard to describe it. There's like an irony when they scored of, well, this goal was coming all along. It'd be a shock if there wasn't a goal. There was no excitement. Like, are we going to score 5? Are we going to score 6? Maybe we'll get 10 at some point. Like, but when I was watching Lille, look, we're going to Bordeaux away. What's going to happen? I have no idea. And you're learning, and it just got me so invested in this team. And like, it's like, yeah, they were my second team. But then I found myself, one of the betting apps over here showed it in a little sort of like tiny box. And I found myself watching that more than watching Celtic on my TV. Like, it just drew me in. And then I started watching other teams, and like yeah, this is my league now. And then I think it was 2009-10, I started writing down things like, there's this kid called Johan Cabaye no one's heard of, and like, yeah, like, before he was even a thing, and just sharing that, and you start going down the blogging route, and it escalated from there. But I was meant to go, I think it was 2006 when I was living in Leeds. I'd booked the Eurostar. I'd found someone on a Lille forum who was a Lille/Celtic fan. He was going to pick us up, take us to the game, have some beers, all that. And there was a fire in London the night before, and they cancelled all the Eurostar trains for that whole weekend, and I couldn't go. I think it was St. Paddy's weekend as well, so I just went and got absolutely smashed with the money I had saved for the trip. I remember checking the score at like 10 o'clock at night, and we got beat 2-0 off Le Mans at home, and I was like, yay! Didn't want to go anyway. and it wasn't until, I think it was 2011, that I went to my first actual game. And like, at this point, I was like, fully in. Like, I know this team inside out, watching all the games. Like, as much as you could watch games in 2011, it definitely wasn't as easy as it is now. And I went, and as soon as I got to the ground, and it was they were playing at an old athletics track. And you had to like climb up to the top, then let you go down to your seat. As soon as I got to the peak and I could see the floodlights and everything, I was like, yep, this is something. It was just there, just a feeling of, like you said, sometimes you pick a team, but I feel like they picked me in a sense, like a random scarf, a trip, and just everything just felt like perfect. And then, yeah, still my team now, 15, 16 years on, like,
I'm trying to remember the quote because my friend Interrozi will always throw it in front of me. But there's a quote, and I can't even remember what player it is. But it's that feeling that you find your club, or you find your place when you feel like home.
Yeah,
right?
and that's it. Yeah,
you walked in there, you're standing at the top of it, and you're just like, hey, it's like I should have always been here.
Yeah,
right.
And I'd been in the city all weekend, and I was like, what if I go to this city and everyone's a dick and I don't like it? But it was weird. Me and a guy called Andy Hudson, we went together, and we just had an amazing weekend. And just that level, just being there in the stadium. I remember we were walking to the ground from the metro, and a French guy obviously heard us speaking English. And why are you here? I was like, to watch Lille. And he was like, but why? I was like, because they're my team. But why? And he was like, you've got Premier League, because the French are obsessed with the Premier League. Like, you'll see more Premier League strips and tracksuits than you will French teams. I don't get it. But they were just like, what are you doing? Why have you come to northern France to watch us when you could go like to Manchester or to London? I was like, it just happened. It's just the way it is. And I'm stuck with this team as well. Same as you guys.
Yeah, it's wild, because the only time I can remember feeling like that in a connection to a sport was the first time I went to a Valor game, and I sat down in the supporter section. It just felt like, I'd been to hockey games, I'd been to all sorts of sports in my life, and that was the first time where I felt like I could literally just kick up my feet. Like, there was this sort of feeling of just like, I've always meant to be here. it's really interesting that
Yeah.
Lille ended up being your club through that way. And it's funny because I ended up wearing my Weymouth kit. I don't know if you can see this, obviously,
nice.
but that was a club that I will wear this kit out here in Winnipeg in Canada, and people look at me and they don't even know what it is. And when they do know what it is, the first question is why.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah.
This just happens to be the club in
So
England. How
long have you got? Yeah.
Exactly. Like, how long do you want to talk? There's a bar over there. Let's go have a drink, right? So you got really into Lille, and then you started to blog on the Gib football show in 2010 for the World Cup, doing daily blogs, right? And then it turned into
an awful decision. Like, who did day 1 to 5, you're like, yeah, this is great. You're like day 14, like, oh, please end this now. Like,
one of those things where you have a great idea, and then you commit to it, and then you're into it about a weekend. You go, what have I signed myself up for?
Exactly. When you've got a full-time job as well, and you've got like a wife to like entertain as well, and you're like, why am I doing daily? Yeah, and then it was my friend, a guy called Brent who lives in Austin. He did a podcast. He's like, come on my podcast. I'm like, yeah, cool. Don't know what a podcast is. And after that, I was like, yeah, I'm going to start my own podcast. This is what I want to do. And it became fairly big back at the time. Like, we used to get someone on each week from like a different league. It was like Sam Kelly, who now does commentary on BBC. He was doing like Argentine football. Got Sam on, and I think it was that time Twitter and blogging was just like bigging up. It was just blowing up. Like, Michael Cox was a blogger who's now at The Athletic. Like, we were all that kind of level. And there's guys like Ed Mallion, who's like one of the top guys at The Athletic, wrote for Gib Football Show. Like, I had all these guys at the start, and now I'm sat in my bloody spare room, like on the webcam. These guys are making like 6-figure salaries. It's like, damn it, I've messed up somewhere. But yeah, there was a lot of guys like branching out in different leagues and becoming experts and things, and just getting them on. And my friend Scott Johnson, who's another Glaswegian, we just bounce off each other like the two guys in a pub and getting people in on that. And it became a pretty, like, there was like blogging awards back in the day, and we got nominated with like the Guardian and I think it was the Independent and stuff. It was like, wow, as if we were in this, like this was the same category as these guys. Like, not a chance of we winning this, but we got to go and get free alcohol, so that was good. And it was a great, like, we did. I think that we got like the first time we got 1,000 downloads, and I was like, 1,000 people are listening to this nonsense. What is going on? And it grew, and I think we got to like 5 figures at some point. Well, it was going massive. Like, God knows how. Like, why are you listening to us when there's professional people? But I think we hit the right time, and it just blew up, and it was really good fun to do. And then the blogging went more towards. I kind of made a career decision of, if I want to do something like this, possibly in not even full time, but just to get a little bit of money for it, a bit of pocket money, I need to sort of pick my niche and go with it. And French football was the obvious choice. So I set up French Football Weekly as another podcast that started. We were doing like Sunday night after the last game, we'd go straight into it, and then it became a blog, and then it became a website with like 10 people on it, and you start doing some freelance stuff, and it just starts snowballing from there, which was really good fun.
Yeah, it's really interesting because like we've only gotten to a bit of the little bit of the history here, and it just you sound like and maybe I'm wrong, Andrew, but I'm going to go ahead. You sound like a guy that once you've wanted to discover something, you got to pull it all up. You need to dig it all up. You need to figure it all out, section it, organize it, and try to understand it as best as you can.
It's a positive and a downside as well. Like, I can't have a passing interest. I can't just be like, oh, that's pretty cool. I'm like, no, let's find out all these teams and who plays for them and everyone and what tactic are they playing. And having a website sort of lets you indulge in that, doesn't it? It's like you've got somewhere to sort of blurt it all out and show, and having a podcast where you can talk about it, and there's little moments like there's a Philippe Auclair who used to write for the Guardian. He's like the Guardian's French correspondent. I think he's L'Equipe's Premier League correspondent. So he's not doing French football, but he's doing English football and French. And I asked him, like, what do you think of the Evian Lorient game? And he's like, fuck's watching that? And I'm like, I'm watching that.
Pay attention to what I'm paying.
Yeah. And some of the guys who are like the big like guys who work for LeagueOn.com and Be in Sport, and you're talking to them and you're like, I know as much as you do. Like, and you're getting paid for this and I'm not. It's like, you just got to. I was like, I need to keep pushing forward with this because, and I was looking. I was writing for the Mirror for free. It was like exposure, that one they get you with.
Yep.
And then I looked at the website that we had, and you can see where the links are coming from. I think we were getting like 6 clicks through from the Mirror. I was like, this isn't exposure. We're not getting anything from this. So I said to them, like, you either pay me or it stops. And they were like, okay, bye. I was like, fuck. It's not going the way I wanted it to. And then Eden Hazard moved to Chelsea. And they were like, hey, do you fancy writing an article on Eden Hazard? We'll give you £50 for it. And I was like, yes. And like, I've never written 1,000 words so fast in all my life. Like, I've watched this kid since he was 16 years old. Like, didn't have to think about it. And I think it was Ed said that it was like the most read piece on the Mirror for like 2 days in a row. It was like, and then there was the explosion of like Giroud going to Arsenal, and then Newcastle signed like every French player going. And I was just like, do you want a piece on this guy? Do you want a piece on this guy? Do you want? And it starts from there. That's when you start getting your name on Twitter and like French football expert Andrew Gibney. Like, okay, that's what you're going to say, and you start getting more jobs. And it got to the point where I probably had too many jobs for the amount of time that I had. Like, but you're not making enough money to go full time. That's the problem.
It's a very interesting thing that I've heard from other people who want to get into, whether it's journalism, sports journalism, or any sort of content creation in any respect. The first thing you're going to hear from people when they're a bigger group or a bigger entity, a newspaper, is, hey, we could give you all sorts of exposure. But at the end of the day, exposure doesn't pay bills. I can't go to the bank and pay for things with exposure, right?
Exactly.
But at that beginning, I mean, I've done it too, where it's like, oh, I'm super excited for the opportunity, right? And eventually you realize you're doing a job for them.
Yeah.
And it's time to strike out on your own a little bit. And then I see that you started, you turned it to a website, this league obsession turned into a website called French Football Weekly.
Yeah.
Was that something that was right after Gib Football Show, or was that happening at the same time?
It kind of crossed over. It was definitely a period where I was doing both, and then I kind of said to Scott, because we were doing the podcast, like, and we had loads of guest writers, and it became you're an editor, you're a writer. It was like, I don't have time to do all of this. If I want to do French football properly, I need to go full, like, put all my time towards French Football Weekly, which I had to do, and yeah, and even when that was a success, like we were doing like scout reports on people linked with like English clubs. That's where the money is. That's where the hits are. And we were doing really good, like 1,000-word in-depth pieces on these players. We're getting loads of traffic, and there comes a point when then I was like, I had to be like, well, if I keep doing this for free, where am I going to go? And that's when I started trying to do it. Like, you're asking 442, do they want articles on people? You're trying to take it from a website, which is mine, which I love, to kind of get it somewhere else that's going to get me some more exposure and get paid. And we still did stuff for FFW. Like, we went to games as FFW. I remember going to, it was like Celtic against Rennes pre-season, which was such a cool moment, going back to Glasgow and being in like the press box at Celtic. Be like, I used to sit down there, and like now I'm here as press. That was pretty cool. Again, it gave us those opportunities, and we got a friend, Ryan Hubbard, who does Polish football now. He went to the Leicester Monaco game as press, and just having those opportunities and people giving you a chance to be press was cool. And that was the whole point. We had like a 5-year plan to like, can we get paid to do this in 5 years? And I'm not sure if you know about Jonathan Johnson, who writes for ESPN. He was like, me and John started making the website bigger, and he's now working for PSG. Like, and I suppose you can say we sort of fulfilled the goals that we set out to do, and it was really, really good fun. But I think there comes a point where you have to be like you said, exposure is one thing. Now it's time to get paid, and I see it with the FM content guys as well. Like people like Omega Luke and those guys who are like really, really big. But you're like, there has to be a point where you have to sort of cut the tie and go full time, and it's such a difficult decision to make. And I was kind of lucky in a sense of how I got that. I was kind of forced into it when my marriage ended, and I kind of had to take a chance. And that, like, without that, who knows if I'd even got that chance to do it.
And that's actually where I was going to jump into next. It was in 2013, and you decided you're going to try to take this on full time. Your marriage had ended, unfortunately. So you decided to take a one-way ticket to France to live in Lille and push forward as a freelance journalist. What was that like? That sounds like, to me, that sounds a little bit scary, a little bit exciting. Did you have a plan before you left, or was it like, this is happening, let's do this?
So marriage finished in June, and then because I was living in Sheffield, is where my ex-wife's family's from. Like we still talk now, everything's fine. It wasn't just one of those like this isn't happening. Yeah. And I was like, well, I need to leave Sheffield. I'm not from England. So like, where do I go? And I said to my dad, can I come stay with you for a bit? He lives in Glasgow still. And I said to myself, let's give myself 3 months of trying to now use the time that I've got to build up some regular gigs and get enough money that you can do this full time. And I sold, like, there's only so much you can carry on a train, like back to Glasgow. So I was selling all my Blu-rays, I was selling, and I gained enough, and I worked out that I think it was 80 something pound for a one-way Eurostar trip, train Glasgow to London, London to Lille, and that'll get me there. And then the guy who said he was going to give me like a space on his floor till I found somewhere to live, and I was like, I'll get there. I'll give if I can get enough money to survive, I'll give myself 2 weeks to find a place. And if it doesn't work out, I can always go back to my dad's and you start again. Like you've got a safety net of, but still, I mean, to sell all your stuff and move kind of back home, and then to move to France was, they said, exciting. Like I was so excited for what this could be amazing. This could be ridiculous. I didn't want to fail and be like 2 weeks later going home and you've basically had a nice extended holiday in France. Like, and I was lucky enough through the people I was writing for already. I managed to get enough work. I think I was making like £600 a month, like, which is, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when I was like, well, I don't have bills anymore. Like I don't have all these things. When you're building like a family in a house, you have all these other attachments and outgoings. Like, they were all gone. And I think that the room that I found was €200 a month for a room. It's like, yep, that'll do it. I had like a desk, I had a fridge, and like 2 little hob rings and a bed and a sink. It's like, that's all I need. Like, I don't need anything fancy. The electricity bill was, I said, for the first month, I'll just use whatever I want. Like, plug everything in, and if I have to downscale, then I'll downscale. It was €9 for the first month for electricity. It's like, we can do this. This is that's okay. Like, I got some fiber internet for €20 a month. It's like okay, £600 doesn't sound like a lot, but maybe it was like €800 back then. If I've got 3 like quarters of my money left, I'm gonna have a good time. This is gonna be all right. And I got my Lille season ticket. I got a basketball season ticket. I was like, it was such a basic time, and I look now, like I earn like 3 times as much now doing a really regular job, but I have less to spend.
Yeah, well, that's the reality, right? Is it? I always joke about this a little bit too with friends of mine, like where we can remember working some of the jobs where we were renting either a room or we still lived at home or whatever it was, and how we always felt like there was always extra money left. And then as we've gotten older, that extra money slowly dissipates because we just find other things that we apparently need to have or need to subscribe to. Or like me, I have a video game problem, I just all sorts of things.
But you got to buy cameras and lights and all this other stuff that comes with it. Yeah.
Exactly. Or scarves or kits or whatever it is. So it ended up going well for you though, because it seems like you were able to start writing for, 442, The Mirror, ESPN, ITV, Unibet, loads of different places. And so, while you talk about a kind of a tight budget, you were living a little bit of what you were dreamed. You had set yourself up to do this and you were doing it.
Yeah, sadly, a lot of those gigs didn't come till later. I think when I was in Lille, I was writing for a Korean website, which there was an English-speaking guy who was like, do you want to write these articles for a Korean website? You don't have to proof it because it's getting translated. I was like, yeah, we'll do it. It was like £50 a week. Yeah, we'll do one of them. There was a couple of betting sites. It was just all little bits that kind of added up, but it was regular. You do this on a Tuesday and a Thursday. There was nothing at a weekend, so I can go and watch games and drink beer. But sadly, the reason why I had to move back was it was in January, February, my room got broken into. And my passport was gone, laptop was gone, there was cash in the wardrobe, that was gone. And in France, the insurance, I'm not sure the insurance works in Canada or the US, but in France, the insurance is like, you pay everything up front and we'll maybe give you it back down the line at some point because we're France. And like the laptop that I had was a previous replacement for when my other house in Sheffield got robbed. So I didn't have a receipt. I had like no proof that I owned this laptop. And they were like, nope, we're giving you nothing back. It's like, in England, they'd be like, well, here's the box or here's a picture of it on my table. Cool, fine. France are like, no dice, getting nothing. And sadly, the same week, the Korean website were like, we're not doing articles anymore. And there was another website, I forget, it was one that like, oh, we're going in different directions. We're not taking articles anymore. So I think I lost like 2/3 of my revenue stream and all my like belongings in the same week. And I was like, oh, this is not going well.
What a tough week.
Oh, mate, it's like Catherine, my wife now, she was amazing. She was like phoning up consulates and trying to get like things organized, and like they stole my phone charger as well. Like, so it was like 3 a.m. and my battery's running out. I don't have a phone charger.
No soul for those people. You leave the charger for the phone. Come on.
The charger, and the worst thing they stole. I had a Lille champion scarf from winning the league in 2011, and they stole my scarf. It's like it's like
that's that's heartless. That's absolutely heartless.
Yeah. Electronics can be replaced. Things like that are just you can't replace them. That got me. But yeah, it was a tough week. Being on my own as well, it wasn't fun.
So before we jump into moving back, I have a question for you because you mentioned that you also got a basketball ticket. Like, is that Lille? Does Lille have a team themselves?
Yeah, it was in the Pro B, like the second division of French basketball. Yeah, it was maybe like 200 people in the arena. There was an American guy called John Fields playing there, a guy from Cape Verde. Like, it was a Friday night around 7 p.m. They sold beer and sandwiches. It was like, this is your pre-drinks, like bit of basketball, and it was like, the fans are good, man. The fans were going mental. And it was a nice like hangout. And there was a French guy called Jimmy. And he was trying to speak a bit of English, and I'm trying to speak a bit of French, and we kind of went back and forward. It was a cool, like, I think it was €60 for the season ticket for like 20 odd games. I was like, yeah, it was beautiful.
That's awesome. I was just curious because I'm always curious about when it's one of the things I don't think North Americans realize is how big basketball is in Europe, especially in some countries, and how often these clubs actually develop really good NBA quality talent.
Yeah, I think I've seen a couple of the teams that Lille played against. There's a few guys have you see like scouting reports of the NBA draft. Like this guy, like there was some good players. I think you don't realize how good the NBA guys are down that level. There's still some really good basketball to watch. Like, and the fans loved it. There was a few. Lille weren't a very big team, but when the away teams came, they're bringing like 200 people with flags and like bands and stuff. And the atmosphere's like, I know they're not the same team. This atmosphere is rocking because of these guys. This is great fun. Like really, and it was nice to have that from. This football was becoming the job. So it's hard to watch games as a fan. Like you're watching Montpellier against someone, and you're watching like Remy Cabella, and you're kind of scouting him. To go on a Friday and watch a sport that you love as well, and it's just like chilling out. It was a really nice like, end to the week. So it was good to have that separation.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I've seen your tweets. I saw the pain that you experienced in the recent NBA Finals. We won't go too deep into it.
I definitely touch on this. Too soon.
Your passion for the sport, it's cool to see. I mean, you're staying up late to watch these games, so it's cool to see. So you lived a year in France. You went to 58 games in a season, which is wild. That's like a dream. You actually met your second wife on Twitter, and you both moved to Manchester in 2014. So what's happening now at this point? Are you working pretty steadily? Who are you writing for? What are you doing?
Sadly, I think the week after, so I had to give my notice in France. Like I said to the landlord, look, just don't have any money anymore. And she kind of gave me my deposit back as my last month's rent. And I got some money back from the insurance. It's like, well, this is, you got to call it a day, sadly, is the way it is. We moved back to, Catherine was living in Wales with her mum, moved there. And I managed to get a job waiting for a Bleacher Report the week before I left France. But it was already like, the room's gone, we're going back. And that was like a full-time, more money than I'd been earning in France all the way through. I was like, oh, where were you 2 weeks ago? Like this, we could have kept going, like, but things happen for a reason, and got the Bleacher Report gig, which was writing about Paris Saint-Germain for them. It was like 5 articles a week, like proper, like intense. It was like this is your, anything you get on top of this is great, but this is like your base. This is going to get you to go full time properly, and that was an amazing opportunity. It came at the right time. Yeah, and then you start going for, like, that was when 442 came and things like that, and they were really big on their scouting reports. So, and it's like when people talk about the FM stuff now, it's like, I have no interest in being full-time content creation because I've lived that life. I've lived the freelance, waiting to get paid, like firing invoices, and Kat was going, how much have we got to spend this month? I don't know yet. Like, it depends if these 4 guys all pay me at the right time. And you can't switch off, especially when you've built your career on transfer stories. Like, you're at a restaurant and you're scrolling through Twitter in case someone's late to someone. Like, I remember when Anthony Martial went to Man United, I think I wrote 4 articles that day. Like, you just have to be like, you're primed, ready to go at all opportunities for any crumb of a story. Like, it's fun, but it grinds down, because if you miss something, you go out to spend a nice day out and you've missed the story. You, like, in your head, you're working out how much that is. Like, it's a young man's game. It's a young man's game, Jeremy. And I feel like the guys are trying to do it now full time. Like, fair play to you, but yeah, it's a tough old grind, but it's fun. Like, you get to set your own agenda, and like, I'm going to go for a little wander. I'm going to go get a beer, but I don't think you switch off. Like, that's what makes it tough. But yeah, it was amazing to, like, you build up these contacts of all these places, and like, someone gets linked and you're sending off like 10 emails hoping someone says yeah.
Like, it just seems like you're constantly, as you mentioned, you can't turn it off. You're going to have to look for those opportunities for the next story, for the next breaking news, and then make your pitch to be the one who's writing the story, right? That sounds, as much as you're doing what you love at the same time, it's draining, and it probably was tough at moments to try and balance life with
you're definitely burning the candle at both ends, because you'll make a decision, go, right, I'll go out in the morning, then I'll write this article for Unibet, and then you get home and you're like, can't be bothered, or your cat's like, let's go do something, you're like, oh, okay, and you're like, it gets to like 11:30 at night and you're like, fuck, I need to write this article now, and then you have to force yourself. Like, it's like I said, it's really fun, because like, you're getting to write about football. Like, but yeah, I think it has a shelf life, and I think you find most people that do it, they're looking for an end goal of, give me something less intense than this, like a regular, like, yeah. And you look at the big guys, look at like Marcotti and these guys, they'll do like a Monday article or a Friday article, and like, that's, you build your sort of your schedule around that, where I think when you're freelance and you're building up, it's like you're writing whenever on everything. But yeah,
it never stops.
Never stops.
Whenever we record the podcast live here on Twitch, I always like to bring in a bit of chat, a little bit of questions from the community. So we've got one here from Game Legend. He's interested, is there any other clubs apart from Lille or Celtic that you follow or are a big fan of?
I think Valencia was the first team that I ever like took an interest in outside of Celtic. It was for showing my age, guys like Pablo Aimar, when he turned up in Valencia with like the curly hair, and Gazika Mendieta. Those were, I remember going to Celtic Park for a UEFA Cup game with a Valencia shirt on, because I had a Valencia shirt. I was like, I get to see Valencia. They were the first ones. It got to a point where I used to watch Bundesliga, I used to watch Eredivisie. So there's always teams. It probably was more players. But once I got into Ligue 1, it was like, this is me. This is all I'm going to. And I was watching 4 or 5 games a weekend. Like, but there's always like a lot. I've got a soft spot for Montpellier, because I was there in 2012 not when they won the league, but they were playing against us in Montpellier. And we all went down as like the website. We all went down to like, as a little meetup there. Philippa, who still runs the website now, she lives down there. We went to Montpellier, and the situation was Montpellier were top, PSG were second, we were third. If we beat Montpellier, we can win the league. If Montpellier beat us, or I think if PSG win, were they playing Saint Etienne, someone? If PSG won, we couldn't win the league. I think PSG were 2-0 at half time, and it put my head in one of the weirdest spaces because you're like, your team's on the counter, and you're like, shit, if we score, PSG are going to win the league. But you don't want to boo your own team. Montpellier scored in the 95th minute, and the whole place went mental, and I went mental, and like that trip and that moment of seeing them win the league will always have a soft spot for them. But I'm trying to find around who I've not got an MLS team. I've dabbled with the New York teams. I've been to New York, and I've got a good friend who's a Portland Timbers fan who wrote a book about them. I used to have a Darlington Nagby Timber shirt back in my collection. But no, I stuck to League One, and then I'm sure we'll get to the jobs after that. It kind of took me away from watching the European stuff. But like, I think it's players now, isn't it? It's players, and it's kind of become like an NBA thing of like, you like Steph Curry or you like LeBron. Now it's, I like Erling Haaland, I like Mbappe. You don't have to support Dortmund anymore. You can just like the player. And I think football is definitely getting to that sort of stage now.
Yeah. And I've mentioned on previous interviews where we've talked about basketball, I always think basketball has been a bit ahead of its time in its ability to market individual players. Like there is loads of basketball fans who truly just follow one or two players, and they could care less about what team they're on. That's not the most important thing to them. And
yeah, I've got a Giannis t-shirt. I've had like Kevin Durant jerseys. Like I think it was like the fashion, and like when I played basketball as a kid, like you want to wear and you like players, and like, you're still a Suns fan, and I'll never wear like a Lakers jersey or a Spurs, but you can appreciate. I think it's easier to appreciate like teams from the East because they're not the threat.
That's fair. Yeah, they're not necessarily close enough to be a rival, so you can see a little bit more respect. I get that.
Exactly.
So, you move back 2014. You're doing a lot of the freelance. You're getting articles out. You're covering women's soccer. The women's soccer league. Man City, Liverpool, England. You even got a chance to go on BBC 5 in 2015, which was very, very cool. Which, by the way, where was the Women's World Cup held in 2015?
It was in Canada.
There you go. The first time I got to see a game in person was I saw Australia versus the States here in Winnipeg. Oh
wow, that's awesome. Yeah, it was a good tournament. That was a lot of late nights doing that as well. So I was doing daily articles for Bleacher. Like they wanted them in the morning to kind of go out. That was one of those like daily article things again that at least I was getting paid this time. It's not as bad, but that was good. That was a really good tournament. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, it was a great tournament. I mean, us Canadian fans, we were sort of hoping we'd get past England in the quarters, but that didn't happen. But it was amazing to be able to see the girls play in front and actually go to a game. And that was the seed for me that switched me from hockey first to slowly moving over and becoming, as much as I'm still a hockey nut, football is by far and beyond. I
don't think people realize when like as a tournament comes to your like country or your town, how much it can take fans and you can plant that seed and grow the sport. Like I think it's easy from the outside to be like, oh, it's in Canada and there's games on, but when you're there and it sort of engrosses you. Like I went to France for 2 weeks during the Euro 2016, and you see how it takes over a city and everything's about this sport and this event. It's really, really cool. Like
I can still remember there was cars. They had rental cars all over the place that just had World Cup, on the side of them. And you still occasionally I'll see one that someone bought used and never took the stickers off. And I'm like, memory.
Love it. Nostalgia.
Yeah, exactly. So in 2017, you got a full-time gig with Football Whispers, which I guess is now 23 Sport.
Yes.
And you were a writer and social media manager. You covered, the International Champions Cup, including going down to Los Angeles. What was that like going to the States to cover an event?
And it happened really quickly as well. I think someone else was meant to go because I was doing social for the Whisper side, and there's a guy called Charlie who was doing it for the ICC side. And people got sick or could go, and it was like, "Do you want to go?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like a week, and I think it was meant to be 4 days. I think it was Monday to Thursday, and then I was meant to fly back on the Friday. And I was like, "Well, can I just come back on the Monday?" And you're like, "I'm going to be off on the weekend anyway. Can I spend my weekend in LA? Like, why not?" Come all the way. And it was very bizarre. Like I had to like come up with a whole social media strategy and like plan of like a timeline. But then it was like a live event to launch the ICC, and it was like West Hollywood, and there was meant to be this like a celebrity game, and then they weren't even sure what celebrities were going to turn up. Like Steve Nash was meant to be there. And I was losing my mind. Like, I get to meet Steve Nash, and he didn't even turn up. Like, oh, God damn it! But I was standing beside Odell Beckham and Draymond Green, who were having a conversation. I'm like, click, click.
I don't mind me, fellas, just taking some photos. Just so
carry
I
on,
remember
lads.
that I was here.
And when you've grown up like 10 miles outside Glasgow in a little like overspill town that was made when Glasgow got too big, and like I'm stood in LA next to LeBron, like these guys, like Draymond Green. There was Contavious Caldwell Pope. There was rappers and stuff, and I think because I've followed the American sports for so long, I kind of knew who everyone was. I think you could have turned to me as like an Englishman, like, don't know who you are, like Little Wayne was there and so.
You covering the event too? Oh no, I actually play in the NBA.
yeah. It was like Mia Hamm was there because she's like ambassador for Roma, and like Paolo Maldini turned up, and I'm like, what is going? The best conversation I had was with Ray Hudson. If you know who Ray Hudson is,
yeah, I absolutely love Ray Hudson.
Because I used to watch La Liga on like stream, and it was the Goal TV stream. So I know Ray from that. I was like, I had like a 20-minute conversation with Ray Hudson. It's like, this is the coolest thing ever.
I would love to pick that guy's mind for 5 minutes. Like
He was so good.
I meeting him.
It was I'd spoken to him on Twitter a couple of times. I think once you get the blue tick on Twitter, it kind of people reply to you even though they don't know who you are. It's great. Like, and so we had the odd conversation. I think I'd been on Sirius FM with him doing the League Gun stuff, so he kind of knew who I was roughly. Yeah, he was just he's such a nice guy. As nice a guy in person as he kind of comes across on the commentary. It was like he was the one that I thought I can talk to him without annoying him. Like, I'm not going to try and have a conversation with Paolo Maldini. Like, he doesn't give a shit who I am. Like, but Ray was more on that tier below that you can talk to. Like, and yeah, it was a crazy event, and like and just to be in LA, and like you're walking down the Sunset Boulevard. You're like, what am I doing here? To be there for free, like for work, like was ridiculous. That's probably the biggest takeaway from that time. There was getting that opportunity, like, to run social media for the couple of million followers, like in LA. Okay, yeah, that's not going to happen again anytime soon. Crazy.
Yeah, and it just seems like it was a really, I mean, it was as much as you were busy and it was a lot. It seems like it was a really cool experience. Obviously, memories you're going to remember for as long as your brain allows you to.
I think I'm the kind of person where I think a lot of people would have like stayed up late and worked. I was like, it got to like 5 o'clock, and I'm like, I'm going to go wander around LA. I'm going to go to Hollywood and see what's going on. Like, I am not going to miss the opportunity of where I am. Like that. When are you going to get to do this again? Like, without spending thousands and thousands of pounds? And yeah, it was such a cool opportunity. Like, I'm going to take every chance I've got here. Like, I went to LAFC game as well. That was really fun. Like, seeing them going crazy, that was cool. And went to a Sparks game. I was like, I've been to the Staples Center now. This is like, yeah, amazing.
Check marks off the bucket list, really, right there, right? So unfortunately, then it looks in 2019, you ended up having to leave if you were made redundant. And this experience, and this is what I wanted to get to, is this experience really kind of soured you on the sport. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Probably wasn't the redundancy part that soured it. I think as much as I got opportunities at Whispers, the people there weren't the greatest people to work with. There's a management side of it. I mean, most of them aren't there now, so I don't care if they hear this because I would tell them to their face. And it's the first time that Kat's ever said that she saw my mental health being affected. Like, I don't suffer from depression. I don't have. I'm lucky to be in that sense. I don't have these issues that you see lots of people have now, and like, I love that people can now talk about it. It's amazing, but it's not something that's ever affected me. But it did there. Just I felt useless. Like the day after the ICC launch, I got a bollocking from one of the managers because they didn't understand an Instagram post that I'd put. And I think it was like I did like hair done, nails done, everything did, and they were pulling me up on the grammar of the did, and I was like, it's the fucking song, like.
It's a reference, folks. Come
yes,
on.
yeah. And because of the time difference, I'd gone to bed thinking like, and people from ITC are like, yeah, you smashed it, amazing. Go to bed, wake up to like messages of like, please explain this, and like, I don't need this. I'm in LA, and I don't need this rubbish. And it went from there. I just didn't feel valued, especially on the social media side. It was like you're trying to. Social media has changed massively, and I've seen it from when I was starting. People retweeted stuff, people shared each other's work, and now it's very much a case of people like posts and people share things via like WhatsApp or DM. Like, I think people less now share it publicly and be like, look at this, read this article, do this, especially in football when there's so much noise, just constant articles. And like we were getting engagement through like funny videos. Hey, look, this guy fell over. Ha 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 ha. And then they were wondering why people weren't reading our analytical pieces on football. It's like, well, you've built an audience that like crap. Like, they're not going to read XG and like shots per game, and like you're built two different, because they put a lot of money into like adverts on Facebook videos of like, here's a funny African kid falling over, like we're trying to kick a football. And then it's like, and trying to explain this to people, and then they're like, oh, this article's only got 2 retweets, and just like beating me down. And like, to the extent where I only started, and I think a lot of us, I don't know if you know a guy called Ryan Baldy who writes for BBC now. He's done a couple of books. Like, he left before the redundancies, and he's done really well. But even he was saying like, don't watch as much football anymore. They just seem to like suck all the joy out of this sport that this is why we did it, because we loved it, and they're just sucking out of it. Like, you have to write 3 articles a day. Go write a West Ham article about what doesn't matter. Like, that's not living the dream anymore.
You're just a machine creating content for the sake of having content on a page, instead of chasing a story that you find interesting or you think people need to know.
Exactly. It was just churn. Like, on Tuesday you do a Man City article, and on a Thursday we do a Spurs article, and there was like 3 or 4 writers there, and all of us like privately were like, this is awful. Like, this is an awful place to be. It's an awful place to work. And that's why I went for the social media. Was like, well, then I don't have to write West Ham articles anymore. And do you really need to watch football to tweet about it? Really, I can tweet a GIF. Like, I can tweet a clip without watching these games. And that's where like, and I was starting to get into NFL as well. So spending my time watching NFL, like, and not watching football. So it's like, football's Monday to Friday, then I'll do other stuff. And it just took away. Like, I didn't watch Lille as much because I was just drained from everything that was bad about that job. So there's like spreads into football. So then football's the enemy. It's like, I don't want to watch it. I don't want to watch these games. Like that, I'll check the highlights on Monday, like when I'm getting paid to do it. And that's when
unfortunate, right? That it takes it to a place where you're like, I'll do it when I'm paid, even though before you were chasing it because you loved it.
Before I was getting like 2 or 3 buses somewhere to go watch 7th division French football in the cup, like. And now I'm like, I won't even turn on my TV. And I think having Kat helped, because having Kat was like, well, no, I'm not going to watch that game on a Thursday because we're going to go for dinner, or we're going to go do this, and I'm going to go do things I actually enjoy, rather than when before it was like, I'm going to do everything to make this a success. And they took away that passion from it. And when the redundancies got announced, I genuinely spoke to the guy who was in charge and went, please make me one of the 3 that get released. Like, I'd have been more upset if they didn't get rid of me. Like, we got to that point. I was like, so I think they were going to give us like 6 weeks money. I think it was like enough for like 3 months' pay I was going to get. I was like, let me go, and then I've got 3 months to find something else that isn't this. And I think after a week, Kat was like, you can see, even her mum was like, you can see the difference lifted off, like the weight's gone. Like, and it was a really, really sad ending. To like, and it's one of those that the decision I made to go to Whispers got us a mortgage for the house we're in now. Without that full-time contract, we wouldn't have got this house. It's like, so you can't say it's all bad, but it just went in a really bad way. And like, it's a decision I had to take at the time. And you look back and you go, maybe if you didn't do that, what would have happened? But it is what it is.
That though, right? We can go back and look at our lives and go, how could it have happened? And you know what? I was someone who, took a job, and it wasn't a football job, but it was something where I had that same creep of the life became less, and work stress just started to inject itself basically into every facet of my life. And it drains you. And it is that first week when you aren't doing the same things that you were doing. I believe it. I bet Kat saw a completely different person.
Yeah.
Because it was the same thing I heard from Hannah when I went through a similar experience. So on the end of that, very happy that you ended up rediscovering the love for the sport that wasn't attached to this need to be productive. It was attached to the idea of loving the game and really being interested in what you're seeing. So you mentioned a little bit that you actually got into the NFL, which I always find interesting, because before I got into the Football Manager kind of soccer, community overseas, I always thought NFL was truly a bubble North American popular sport. And what I've learned is there's a massive crossover between football fans, soccer fans, and those who love American football. How did you get into NFL football?
It's something way back in the day, Channel 4 used to show, it was like a Saturday morning program. It was, I'm not sure if you're aware of, they used to have the Italian football as well. It was like Italian football at 10 till 11, then Blitz was on 11 till 12, and it was like a highlights package. And then there was games on, I think it was the Sunday night games, but I was a kid, and it was like, it was on, I'll watch any sport going, like just watch it. And then because it's always something I wanted to get into, I didn't have a team, I'd always wanted to do, but the games they're always on Sunday evening. And that's when League One's biggest game of the weekend's on. Like 8 p.m. here is the big League One game. So it was just never something I could do. It was like you need to watch this game. Like that's, and obviously when the passion for football was going, and I didn't have to watch League One anymore. So my friend Tom, he became a Texans fan through Hard Knocks and his man crush of JJ Watt, like massive. Like, he's even talking about getting a Cardinals jersey now. He's like, he loves this man more than I think is right for a guy who has a girlfriend, and there's probably a poster of JJ on his roof, possibly. I don't know.
Hey, stand-up guy though. I love JJ.
Like even though it was you'll get to who my team is, and you'll see why I can't quite share. But Tom was like, why not pick a team and then. And he knows me. He's like, once I pick a team, I'll need to learn this team and I'll need to learn who they're playing against. And like, he knows how my brain works. And he was like, well, if you pick a team in the AFC South, we get to have 2 games a season. Like, yep, I'm up for that, but a bit of kind of friendly banter. Yeah. And then he was like, but you can't pick someone who's already won the Super Bowl, because then you don't have that moment of your team win the Super Bowl. Like, okay, so well, who am I left with? It was like the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Tennessee Titans. I was like, okay. So I am a massive 39-year-old Taylor Swift fan. So Nashville, Tennessee, I was like, okay. And knowing how my brain works, like, well, if I like this team, I'm going to have to go there at some point. And who the fuck wants to go to Jacksonville? Really? Like, I was like, I wouldn't mind going to Nashville. It was like, so it seemed a very obvious. And he was selling me on bloody Mariota. And then this young running back who they drafted, Derrick Henry, and I was like, okay, this seems like a decent enough choice. So yeah, I picked the Titans that day in a coffee shop in Manchester, and yeah, I went from there. And then he said he'd been playing fantasy with his friend Mallory, who's in Philadelphia, and then he's like, oh, next year we'll do fantasy together. And I was like, my only experience was like FPL, which is a totally different. Like everyone's picking the same players, and it's not. But I loved the draft and all that. I was like, and then I saw Red Zone. I don't know if you guys watch Red Zone over there. It's like Scott Hansen, what an absolute legend. And like just sitting down and watching all the best bits of these games fly into your TVs. Like, I'm sold. This is the great. Like, Sundays will never be the same again. This is amazing. And I'm like, so Titans are my team. Like, but again, I now know the whole week because I must know about fantasy and sleepers and who are the guys, the waiver wire. Like, it's like, thanks, Tom. You've got me another hobby that bloody gets me obsessed.
Got a whole other league and registration rule, everything to learn right under the sun, basically. And
I think the reason why NFL works over here is like I struggle with the NBA because of the times. I'm lucky the job that I work in now. I work nights, which is perfect. NBA's on, like finals, playoffs were great. NFL kicks off here at 6 p.m. and you can watch a whole lot of games and go to bed at 11 and you maybe miss the evening games, fine. Like, you can see so much of it in a normal time. And it follows that sort of football sense of it's once a week as well. Like, NBA, you lose a week and you've missed 4 games. Like, what's happened? I think it's so much more digestible for sort of British fans because of the way it kind of mirrors football in that sense of the schedule. And I think that was what makes it so much more marketable over here. Is like you can watch it, you can understand it, or once you get into the rules and stuff, it's fine. Like, you don't need to know about like blocking assignments and stuff. Like, you just need to know this is good and this is bad. There's a really basic version of NFL that you can enjoy, or you can go deep into like nickel packages and stuff. If you want to go that deep, you can do it. Like, but you don't need to. I think the same with our football over here. Like, you can enjoy 30-yard screamers, or you can enjoy like a 3-5-2 formation with inverted wing backs. Like, you can really go as simple and as advanced as you want, and I think it works really, really well together.
Yeah, it's and I think the NFL, you mentioned, red zone and the way they package their highlights, the way they package and market their league. They're one of the best leagues in the world, I think, in terms of understanding how to turn their sport into entertainment. Like, when it's the Hard Knocks show, whether it's the way that they're showing their highlights, whether it's the constant need to try new technology. I don't know if you've seen the 360 cameras that they used last year, right, where they're showing a guy coming into the end zone, and now you can do a 360 turn and look right where you need to for where that ball fell out of his hands. Is it a fumble? Is it not? Right? Like, it's
so good.
It's very cool to see the tech behind that league. And I think people don't realize is they break barriers and create technology that's used in other leagues. And the one that I always like to talk about, which is this is totally a random factoid. Here we go, Andrew. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
Fox used to do ice hockey, and during the time that they covered ice hockey, they put a little thing inside the puck.
On the puck to make it more visible. I remember it. Yeah.
So that technology is what led to the technology that led to having lines on the field, being able to say where the first down and the second down is. And then the NFL took that and used it, to the nth degree now. It's just one of those things where the NHL tried something new, immediately abandoned it, and everybody else picked it up.
I must say, when I went to my first NFL game, we went to New York for our honeymoon, and we went to see, at the time, it was the Jets against the Jags, and they were both terrible. But watching a game in person, when you're like, where's the lines? How do I know what down it is? Like, where is all the information that used to get fed to me? Now I don't know anything. Like,
yeah, it's the same if you ever go to a baseball game. You feel like all the stuff they give you that gives you the context when a guy comes up to bat, you're looking for it somewhere in the field. But it's really interesting to see the NFL grow. And I think we all know that the inevitability is that there is going to be an NFL franchise overseas at some point.
I don't see why not. I think the time difference isn't. Like, if you can do like San Francisco to Jacksonville, you can do like Dolphins to London. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, and it's such a short season as well. And if it's with the right scheduling, you can make it work. I can see it. But I think what's going to be really interesting with that is something I'm really fascinated in. Everyone over here's got a team already. We've all got a team. So
what happens when we?
Yeah, if you got the London Jaguars, then like, you might, if you're a Jaguars fan, you'll support them. But how many people are going to dump their team? Like, I know people who have been like 49ers fans since like Jerry Rice. You're not just dumping that because there's a team in London, especially if you're not from London. Like, I don't know what travel's like over there, but here, travel is expensive. Like, if I wanted to go watch a London team at the weekend, I'm paying £90 for a train. Like, that's a lot of money to go with the toss of the ticket and your food. Like, I'll just watch the Titans on TV, thanks. I'd rather save up for a trip to Nashville rather than go to London. I was
just going to say, imagine being a Canadian fan and wanting to see a Raptors game. And it's not a train ride. It's a $400, $500 round trip flight, a hotel, the game, food, right? But at the end of the day, we just adjust. We make it a weekend, not a day. It's not a day trip. It's a weekend trip now. Like, one of the most popular things out of Winnipeg is quite often they will do a package where you go down to Minnesota and you can see a Vikings game, an NBA game, and a Twins game, right?
That's cool.
The same weekend. But that's
you got to make it worth your while. Yeah, you got to. It's a whole. It's not just nipping to. My friend Corey, who I met in Lille, was from New Orleans. Will drive like 500 miles to go watch the Saints and then drive home. We're like, what are you doing? Like, but I think the difference is you guys, that's like a normal journey, yeah. Whereas we're like, it's like going to Italy and back. What are you doing, you madman?
I always love telling stories of our drives. It's funny.
You mentioned the Raptors. Do you know whose jersey I did have? Bryant Reeves of the Vancouver Grizzlies. Big country. I had that jersey.
I am still sad that they left the Vancouver market. I think if they had stuck it out, not to say that Memphis doesn't deserve a team and they haven't done great there, but I think if they'd stuck it out, we would have two really good franchises here in Canada.
I think when your poster boy was a guy who's got the same physique as me, that's probably not a great selling point. Like,
no, not the best. And I also find it's one of those unique North American things too, right? Where this team, the Grizzlies, named after a bear that is in British Columbia, moves to Memphis, and they decide, you know what? Let's keep the name. Grizzlies don't mean anything to us whatsoever, but we're now the Memphis Grizzlies. It's all good.
So is it Utah Jazz as well, isn't it? Like things like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Or for those who don't remember, the LA Lakers were originally from Minnesota. Like, it's not a win.
Minneapolis Lakers, wasn't it? Yeah.
Anyway, we're a little bit off topic here. We'll fly a little bit back over to your journey back to loving the game. And so the pandemic, which was, a little bit of a big event for most of us. I think most of the people in the world noticed this thing happen. There's some changes, we were stuck at home. We had a lot more time at home to ourselves or with our family or whatever it was. And it looks like you jumped back into Football Manager, which is always a gateway.
The gateway drug, isn't it?
It's a little bit of a gateway drug to get back into football. But you started playing FM for the first time in 10 years. You got obsessed with the game again. You got back into blogging, and you went back into content creation, which ultimately led you to watch Lille again. And this is leading me to the ultimate question here. What do you think of our man David?
I knew you were going to ask this because the start of that season when he joined was when I was trying to force. I was like, it's like, I'm a fan again. Watch Lille. You will enjoy football. Watch it. And he wasn't very good to begin with. No. It was, and there was a guy Alex Stewart, who does the TIFO videos. He was a big advocate. I was like, I don't see it, mate. I really don't see it. He's like, give him time. And I'll be honest, I came back from maybe the last 6-7 games of the season. I still don't see it. He seems to just pop up in the right position, which is such a skill as well. Like, but he's really not involved in anything else. Like, the ball ricochet off the post, off a defender, and there he is, goal. And you're like, goal. Like, the numbers are there. He scored 13 goals, but I don't think if you didn't know anything, I don't think you'd watch Lille and go, he's the guy you spent 30 million on. And hopefully it's been such a difficult year, like, for everyone. And I think all sports have seen it. Like, how much interaction have you got with your teammates if you're not allowed to, like, if you're in a bubble or whatnot? Who knows what the players actually do in their spare time? Like, but to settle in a new country, it's just down the road from Belgium. It's really, really close. But to settle in at a new team, maybe next season we're going to see the sort of best of them. But I'm not convinced. I'm far from convinced. I think if you'd spent 10 million on him, I'd be like, cool, yeah, like, we'll sell him for 20, like, easy. But it's like, if we're a team that thrives on making profit off of these guys we buy, I'm like, who's spending 50 on him? Like, you're not seeing a £50 million player. Whereas with Victor Osimhen, I think his first game he scored 2, and I was like, he's my favorite player ever. Like, God bless Victor Osimhen. He looked electric, and he lit the league up, and then he goes to Napoli for a lot of money. Like, I just don't see that same level. And like, if someone gave us 35, I think it'd be like, yeah, cool, bye. Like, next, like, yeah. But hopefully we're going to see a lot more of them in the new season. But I'm not convinced.
I think you know what, though, a lot of Canadian fans who obviously we all get super, super excited. I don't think people realize, like, as soon as a player goes to a club of that magnitude, in Canadian fan discords, for example, there's going to be a dedicated channel to just David at Lille, right? And that's all people are going to be talking about. And I think we saw the same struggle you saw, where it was a player who came into a new system and he wasn't playing that kind of the same type of positioning that he played before he got there. He was always late into the box, sort of late arrival. And he was being asked in a lot of these early games to lead the line, and he did look. Yeah,
I think we thought we were getting a striker. We thought we were getting the Osimhen replacement, but he was more like in a shadow striker, like playing this off. And with Burak Yilmaz, there's a chance to be that, but Burak's very similar. He's like the off guy as well, and I think that sometimes doesn't quite work. Like, you can see it working that they both do it, and then you don't know which one to track. But yeah, it's not quite gelled just yet.
I think a lot of fans over here were looking for that like really big breakout season. They were looking, obviously Davies kind of set a standard in terms of how a player can make an impact at a top club and turn eyes and turn heads. I think that most Canadians still see a future with David, and I think that we're going to see better from him.
He's still young. He's still massively young. Yeah, you're in a new country, you're a new team, and hopefully we're not looking in a great spot. I hope that doesn't affect them too much on the pitch. We kind of need them to turn up the next season and be another 10% better. We really, really need that. So we're not going to have the massive reinforcements that you might expect from the champions of France. We're going to need them to be that player that I think they hoped he was going to be.
Yeah, and it's there's hope here that he does well. Like we know that the next conversation is about, you want to see that sale. Like Lille wants to see, their money back from the investment, make some dollars, and then he goes to another club. And it just right now, that doesn't seem to be the conversation.
Yeah.
Question from the chat. There's actually a couple of questions here. One from Legend and one from Sir Grunge, and they're both around pretty much the same thing. So I'm going to grab one of them. Sir Grunge asks, how does Andrew see the financial issues in the French league? What are the big issues looking forward?
Yeah, it's not looking good. There's a whole, without going deep into it, there's a whole TV revenue issue where it basically got pulled out, and Amazon have picked it up, but it's obviously not where they wanted the deal to be. We're kind of going back to, if you look at when like Hugo Lloris was at Lyon, I think Lyon only got £12 million for Hugo Lloris, which when you look back, I think how did Spurs manage to pull that off? Like, French players were never valued as high, I think, as we viewed them. You're like, you should be getting more. These guys, like the top guys in like a really, really good league, who weren't getting the money. And people, as soon as Lille won the league, you get all these tweets about the team's going to rip apart. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the normal. Like, and I listed, I think it was like 3 tweets worth of players that I've seen come and go from Lille. It's like, this is not new. This is a very, like, Eden Hazard come through, gone. Cabaye, gone. Debussy, gone. Like, it's a selling league, and it's always going to be. And I think the problem they're going to have is they were getting to a point where they were getting value. And I think that's going to start going down again. Like, you're going to be able to, like, Houssam Aouar at Lyon, on his day, should be like a 40, 50 million pound player. And he's probably going to leave for 20. Like, that's what, like, if someone like Anthony Martial now, if he was going from Monaco to Man United, you're not getting 80, you're maybe getting 30, 40. Like, it's just, because these teams are going to need this money to survive. And I think people don't.
That they'll be held over top of them, right?
Exactly.
I know you're desperate for this money. I know you need this money. I'm not giving you the value. Here's my offer.
You take it or leave it, yeah. And because they know that these teams can go and buy anyone else from somewhere else, and it's such a shame, because I think people might not realize the gulf between, like, I mean, there's a gulf between PSG and everyone. Then there's like your Marseille, Monaco, Lyon, Lille. Below that, these teams run on the tightest of budgets, the smallest of budgets. If you can sell someone for 10, 15, 20 million, you're set up for like 4 or 5 seasons. That's you've made it. And I imagine when Nicolas Pepe, when he went from Angers to Lille, I imagine Angers put some kind of like 10% of future or whatever. So when he goes to Arsenal, that's massive for them. I'm sure they got some kind of cut of that. And that'll make them, like, they're building a new, like, extension to their stadium. That's it's not just, we got to go spend. They're not going to go spend 10 million on a player. They're going to spend 1 million on a player and totally upgrade their whole club with this money. And I think that's where, like, a lot of these stadiums, you go to Montpellier, you go to Saint Etienne, they're really struggling from when they're built for the World Cup in '98, and some of them got renovations for Euro 2016, but a lot of them are just like old stadiums that need a lot of work now. Like, they look great on TV, they don't look great when you go around them, and like, so the whole, I'm hoping the league's going to have to build itself back up again. And I think the hope was always that the money was going to trickle down from Paris Saint-Germain, but it's a fallacy. It's not. They're now going to spend the money on Donnarumma, Sergio Ramos, Ronaldo. Like, France isn't getting that money, like, because the players that Ligue 1 have now aren't at that PSG level to push them on. Like Mbappe is the exception, not the rule. Like, so they're not buying. And I think you look at like Eredivisie and Bundesliga, they're buying from within. So it trickles down, and Dortmund stay strong because they'll sell Götze and all these guys to Bayern, and Ajax buy Eredivisie talent. In France, it's like you need Marseille to buy French talent, but no, they're going getting Guendouzi and Gedson from Brazil, and because the players that are coming through aren't quite at the level to make the top teams bigger, and it's a bit of an issue, and it's going to take a while again to get better. And I fell in love with this league because of the kids coming through. You're watching the next superstars. So I remember the first official Lille game I went to was Lille 2 against some other amateur team in the 5th tier. And there was the left back was taking corners and free kicks. And I was like, this guy seems a bit keen. And that was Luca Dean when he was like 16 years old. Like, that's why you watch Ligue 1, is to see these guys before they become big. And I suppose it's going to go more down that route. You're going to see younger players coming through faster and then get sold on quicker. And this is going to cycle through. But hopefully it's going to be okay. It's just not going to... It was getting to a really good place, and I think it's just been... The legs have been swiped from beneath it.
Yeah, it's a bit of an unfortunate story. It's disappointing, too, because... if I remember correctly, it's Media Pro that fell out of that deal. And what's interesting is Media Pro is actually the partner with the Canadian Premier League, and it's behind one soccer, right? So when that happened, there was a lot of worry on our side too. And it turns out that those were two separate investment, whatever Media Pro is doing with their piles of money that they're putting places, or not money, debt, whatever it is. It was a shock, because if League could lose their TV deal, anyone could lose their TV.
Yeah, and it seems from the outside, you're like, it's 2021, like multimedia is everything. How can you lose a TV deal in this day and age? Like, how is that possible? The TV is where everything is. Like, everything's global. Like, you can now turn on your TV and watch any league around the world pretty much, and they're struggling to it seems baffling. There's a lot of, imagine it's stuff beyond our understanding of business and finance, but from a sport point of view and a TV point of view, you're like, how can you be losing money? Everywhere else, like NFL TV deals getting bigger, basketball deals getting bigger, like NFL, the EPL is getting bigger. How have you managed to mess this up so badly?
It's really shocking, and it's disappointing too, from just wanting to be able to watch the sport, watch the league from across the sea. And when you see, France at any national tournament, they're an incredible team. They're loaded with talent. So you expect when you watch their top flight that it's going to be, quality across the board. But like you mentioned, it's not that case right now.
The biggest problem France has is France doesn't love its own league. They would rather watch Premier League all day. Like the first weekend I was in Lille, Lyon were playing Social on the Friday night, opening game of the Ligue 1 season, and I walked around Lille for a good hour and a half trying to find a bar that was showing the game. Can you imagine that in England, being like, oh, it's Burnley, West Brom? It'd be shown in every pub going. Like, they don't love their own league, and it's very sad, and it's something I saw from when I moved there. Like, it's not changed. And I think if that ever changed, it would make things so much more better for everyone. Like, if you had people actually watching en masse, but they'd rather watch something else. Yeah,
it's interesting you mentioned that, just because it's something that the Canadian Premier League has to fight against too. Is it, hey, we're a new league, we're not at this quality that you guys have been watching overseas, or in South America, wherever your clubs have been, but we want you to embrace us, we want you to love us, we want you to support us, because ultimately we're growing the sport from the lowest level to having kids interested because they see what they're seeing, to being able to make a clear path to pro for these kids, so that they're not having to go to Cyprus, which was a very popular place for Canadians to go overseas when they needed to start being scouted by folks over in Europe, because they weren't coming to Canada. Why would
Scandinavia as well, wasn't it? I remember was it Carl Hutchinson playing for Copenhagen back in the day? Or Atiba Hutchinson, that was it. Atiba Hutchinson.
And he still plays. He plays in Turkey. And the word is he's going to play he's going to play in the qualifiers for the World Cup. And if we make it, he'll stay and do what? I don't know how much game time he gets, but when he comes and plays, you're talking about a guy who played for Canada in some of the worst squads that we've had, where players were not interested in signing up. So there's a guy who might be on the twilight of his career, but we love that man to bits. But anyway, it's been this has been a really fantastic conversation, Andrew. I really appreciate you sticking me on. We went on a little bit longer than I told you, so I appreciate you sticking around. You'll
have to apologize to Kat because she's not had her dinner yet, so she's going to be really mad at you.
Yeah, well, tell her she can send me any frustration. I'll try to take care of it with an apology, a standard Canadian scooter apology.
Some Timbits, some poutine, and you'll be golden. Absolutely golden.
No problem. We can settle that. We can settle that score, no problem. But Andrew, big thank you for coming on the show. If people want to engage with you, if they want to follow you, where can people find you?
Twitter's the best place. It's Gibney_A. That's where I'll tweet about the Suns being rubbish or many football manager saves, and we'll be probably dipping more into Lille's football when it starts ramping up towards the new season. I'm worried that we're not signed anyone or we're not linked with anyone, so it's going to be a long summer. But come check us out and say hi.
Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll definitely have to have you back.
It's been great to chat. It's been awesome. Really enjoyed it.
We'll pull you. I'll have to pull you back in for a little bit of update on David, and we'll see maybe if the tune has changed. Then there was a bit of a joke in the chat there that I was going to edit out all of the David slander, but that won't be happening. Don't you worry. No bias here. I accept it.
I mean, I hope I can come back on in 3 months' time and I'm bigging him up and he's my favorite player. I'd love that to happen.
I'm making a note now. It's going to happen.
Let's hope so.
But thank you very much, Andrew. You have yourself a great evening and get started on dinner so I don't get too much guff. All right.
You too, mate. Thanks, Jeremy. All the best, mate.
All the best. Thank you. So that was Andrew Gibney, a sports journalist in the past, a big fan of French football, and a football manager creator. So this has been episode 4 of ScootTalks Sports. Really excited to say that we've got another great show coming up on Friday. If you're interested, continue to follow me, twitch.tv/scooter, SCOOTR. And you can find me on Twitter at _SCOOTR. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your time with me. You can find all the previous episodes on your favorite podcast app just by searching ScootTalks Sports. You can also find us on YouTube if you're interested in watching the old video on demand. But hey, this episode's recorded live on Twitch Sports, and you can actually be part of the episode by following at twitch.tv/SCOOTR. That's Scooter. And joining us on Monday and Fridays at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can always connect with me on Discord, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. If you want to find out all the ways and all the links, just go to Twitter, search _SCOOTR, and you can find my profile and click on the link. Let's talk soon. Thanks again so much for listening.